All right, calling this meeting of January 11th, 2022 to order. Mr. Baker, roll call.
Ms. Ulrich? Here. Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here.
Very good. Good evening, Mr. Waller, Board of Trustees. I recommend that the board move to go into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees. Also, in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. And also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G8, to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
Noting that we have a quorum here, are there any motions?
I would motion that we go into executive session to discuss the items as described by Administrator Mills.
I second.
So motion by Unger, second by Ulrich. Mr. Baker.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. So we will convene for executive session. It's 6:02. All right, back at, it appears to be 7 o'clock from executive session. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes, here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here. Anything to report from executive session, Mr. Mills?
No, sir.
All right, moving on now. The Pledge of Allegiance today is going to be led by Cub Scout Group Pack, Scout Pack 24, attached to St. James Church in White Oak. And I don't know if I should say this or not, but Mr. Unger is an alum of this group. So one day.
Long ago, Matt, long ago.
Well, yeah, I think it was back in the 80s.
I
You were
was
a
a
young
Cub
man.
Scout at St. James from 1969 through 1975, and then I transitioned into Boy Scouts and was in Boy Scouts through 1978.
So thank you for coming, and if you guys want to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, we certainly would be honored. Come on up. All right. You guys ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you so much. Great job.
Great job.
Fantastic. If we remain standing, please, for a moment of silence and reflection and meditation, as we ask our Maker to help us guide through the decisions we're going to make this evening. We'll just hold a minute of silence. All right. Thank you. All right, you have in front of you, that was provided in the board packet, two sets of minutes. Three sets of minutes. Mr. Baker, the first set is from?
The first set is from the regular meeting of December 14th, 2021. Would ask for approval.
Okay, so those minutes have been provided in your board packet. Are there any concerns or amendments to the minutes as provided?
I would motion that we go ahead and approve the minutes from December 14th regular meeting.
I have to abstain, I wasn't there.
Okay, I will second. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
I have to abstain, I wasn't there.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, so the minutes are filed as presented in the official board minutes. The second meeting, which is?
Second meeting is the special meeting of the Board of Trustees on December 23rd, 2021. I would ask for approval.
I motion that we approve the minutes of the special meeting on December 23rd, 2021.
And I will second that. Are there any concerns with regard to those minutes?
No discussion from me.
All right, none for me and Ms. Ulrich. You were not a member of the board then. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Abstain.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, so the minutes are filed as presented. The third group of minutes that we will be looking at this evening are the minutes from?
The organizational meeting for the Board of Trustees on January 4th, 2022.
I motion that we approve the minutes of the organizational meeting on January 4th, 2022.
I will second.
All right, those minutes have been provided to you in your board packet. Are any questions or concerns with regard to those minutes?
I did send you a typo correction?
Yes, that was the 14th.
Okay, and I did review all of them, so no other questions or comments.
Ms. Orich?
Yes, sorry.
No comments or
No
concerns?
comment.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes?
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
That's all I have, Board. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Baker. We'll move on to presentations. We have a presentation by Chief Walls of the Department of Fire and EMS, the 2021-2026 Strategic Plan. Thank you for coming out this evening, Chief.
Thank you, and good evening to the board and those in attendance.
It'll be just 1 second, Chief. If you want to get started,
Sure.
I'll
So, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the strategic plan that was developed. It was worked on last year and was put into play in earnest in late 2021. However, this was the first opportunity that we had to discuss and provide a look at it. I'll keep my comments tonight somewhat brief. In light of, we have a number of other things this evening to accomplish, so I'll try to keep it within about 10 minutes. In addition, there's a copy of the plan contained in the board packet, and it'll be available on our website as well in the not-too-distant future. And while we get going, a couple reasons here for strategic planning. Obviously, we want to be able to provide clarity, direction, and focus. And so we need to have a vision. Where do we want to get? We need to have a mission. What's our purpose? We need to have values, how we're going to go about accomplishing that mission. And then we need to know how we're going to get there, and that's with the plan itself. Likewise, it drives organizational alignment, allows everyone internally and externally to participate. COVID provided some challenges in terms of our external stakeholders participating, but we had a survey that was put out on social media for people to participate in, which offered us a number of insights. And likewise, it provides us that vehicle to communicate our message in terms of creating short-term and long-term sustainability. There were a number of elements of the process, and so we had to define our core services. We had to revisit our mission statement. We had to revisit our values, and likewise, we revisited our tagline. We then, in the survey, established the community's core service program priorities with that survey. In addition, we asked those who participated in the survey to provide to us the aspects of the organization that we do well, things that we could do better, and things that they felt that we needed to know. Internally, our battalion chiefs across all 3 unit days had persons participate in a SWAT assessment, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. Some people call it a SWAT, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I like to call it a SWAT assessment because challenges are something that we can overcome. We then identified our critical issues and service gaps, and then determined strategic objectives for organizational improvement. And with those objectives in, and there were 6, we established goals, strategies, and initiatives to accomplish each objective. In addition, then, we had 8 vision statements, and basically I'm here tonight to develop organizational and community commitment to accomplishing the plan. The core services that were identified were emergency medical services, fire suppression, special operations, technical rescue, community risk reduction, fleet maintenance, and our socially responsible programs. In order, in terms of ranking, via the survey to our external customers, emergency medical services was ranked number 1 in terms of their priorities. Fire suppression, number 2, special operations, number 3, technical rescue, number 4, community risk reduction, number 5, fleet maintenance, number 6, and our socially responsible programs, number 7. There were 8 different vision statements. Those revolved around, first and foremost, embracing our heritage and our history, but not being an organization that does things just because that's the way that we've always done it. In addition, we wanted to reframe and identify the future culture. We want to be able to not just collect data, but use that data to make rational decisions and quantify and qualify some of the decisions that we make. Champion a comprehensive health and wellness program. I think it's important to me that we be physically fit, we be behaviorally fit, and spiritually fit as well. Likewise, to build a network of partners to help us do our job, address our organizational sustainability matters, improve our use of technology, and then embrace diversity and inclusiveness. Our values, we reaffirmed those, and so we have organizational values, action-oriented values, and humanistic values. Organizationally, customer service, teamwork, trust, mutual respect, and growth and nurturing. Humanistically, compassion, commitment, and integrity. And action-oriented wise, bravery, courage, and honor. There were a number of strengths. I won't go through all of these. They're contained within the strategic plan. But some of the strengths that were identified by our internal stakeholders: competency and experience, incident management and safety, community outreach and support, being an ISO Class 1 department, training and education. Some of our weaknesses: aging facilities and equipment, diversity, our EMS delivery model, which we've recently tweaked, salary compensation, transparency, opportunities, budget review, community partners, our delivery model, and health and safety initiatives, as well as hidden talent and improved technology. Challenges, once again, our aging infrastructure, depth of skills and experience, green initiatives, technology, retention, and pay, and those are just kind of this Cliff Notes version of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. With that, then, we identified our critical issues and service gaps. Our critical issues were deemed to be infrastructure, compensation, internal communication, funding, our staffing model, and retention. And then our service gaps revolved around our mission statement, and those components being first-class all hazards response, that being accreditation, our administrative staff, infrastructure, and our staffing levels, our socially responsible programs, a program manager, a public educator, community paramedicine, and a community health coordinator, and engaged team of professionals, that being communication and morale. We then identified the 6 objectives for our strategic plan, those being our physical resources, recruitment, hiring, and retention, workforce planning, accreditation, service delivery, and fiscal health. And then with those 6 objectives, then we had goals, strategies, and initiatives to accomplish those goals. This plan runs through 2026, and so we look forward to accomplishing our goals, our objectives, our strategies, and initiatives. The appendices contain the pieces and the parts of the external survey. So Appendix 1 identified how they were connected to the township. Appendix 2, the zip code that they resided in or had a business in within the township. Appendix 3 stated their personal expectations. Appendix 4, the strengths. Appendix 5, the weaknesses. And Appendix 6, then, other thoughts and comments. And so if you're in the appendix and you see a word listed 4 times, it's because in 4 different surveys that word popped up. So things have been sorted alphabetically. Just to give you an example here: community service, community support, community township governing body, and township administration support. So those were words that were used within those surveys. Not that they're typos or mistakes. And with that then, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, thanks, Chief. A great report. I took it home over the weekend and read it. I would just like to comment that I think one of the things our fire department focuses on, for those watching at home, is people view a fire department as going out and responding to incidents. I think we do a great job of going out into the community. And for instance, I set you upon a lady that I met back in November that was not physically able to fix the batteries in her smoke detector. I know that we run neighborhood tours where we'll go through the neighborhood and make sure those are smoke detectors are working and such things, and look at other easy to spot hazards in a house. And I think some people say, well, why are you doing that? That's not what a fire department does. Well, here, that is what we do. And if we can do those things and reduce the number of runs to the neighborhoods that we focus on, that's a great thing. And, you know, one of the other things I think you've done as a chief, and I guess it's been, gee, has it been a year now already, or time sure flies when we're having fun.
about 16
But I always like to ask, and not to go around you, but sometimes if you ask an employee, you know, we can talk compensation all day, but what are the other things that would make this a better job and a better place to work? And I think you do a good job of going out and exploring those other things. Sometimes they're the smallest details, but by finding those out, you can improve the workplace and improve retention. So I think you do a good job of covering a lot of different things with your report that you've come up with. So thank you.
Thank you, and those things point to our values. We have a value of customer service. We have a value of compassion. And so, you know, the person that you're referencing who couldn't take care of the smoke detector, customer service and compassion, it's what we do, and that's why we do it.
She told me it had been beeping for months, and I'm like, well, you should have called sooner, and because we'd rather, you know, if that's her situation, there's likely to be other
Right.
things in her living situation, and I think we went over and discovered a few of those also and made some recommendations. And one planned visit is a lot better than an emergency visit 2 months from now because those things weren't handled. And so nice response on that. But for that one, there's 100 that I don't know about. So great work on it.
Thank you.
To extrapolate on that, there's lots of compliments, so the community does appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add what the other trustees have said. You know, and you use the phrase customer service. I'm always kind of leery. It seems like family more than customer service. I think it's a much more kind of important relationship than customer service even. And I think that Trustee Unger's story kind of supports that. And I love the fact, and I mentioned this last week with reference to something else, that you encourage the people in fire and EMS to be reflective decision makers.
Yes.
What did we do right? What did we do wrong? How do we fix it next time? And that's hard in almost I don't want to use the word military, but kind of a paramilitary institution where there's a hierarchy and still have the ability for leadership to take suggestions and to take routes to fix things. And this is laid out perfectly in your plan and how you deal with these issues. And I'm very happy and appreciative of that, and I think the Colerain citizens are as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to add thanks for you making it a learning opportunity with the tragedy that happened in New York. I saw a post. I didn't read it all the way because I think you just posted it this afternoon. But if you haven't been watching, a number of folks died in a high-rise building, and it was because when people left, they didn't close the door for the fire and the smoke. And I think most cases of tragedies are involved smoke inhalation and not fire in these situations.
That's correct. If you look at the products of smoke, and two of those being carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide, they're, for the lack of a better way to put it, killers.
Absolutely. And that learning opportunity, I think everybody's been focused on what happened there, and just the stories that we're hearing come out now, our heart goes out, and hopefully that will never have to happen again. And you know, hopefully your efforts made it so that it won't happen again here just by making it a learning opportunity. So I thank you for that too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, Mr. Mills, we'll go to public hearings. We have on the docket for this evening 3 public hearings. So we will start each one. The process is to open a public hearing and then call those who want to testify in the public hearing to be held to oath, and then we'll close that public hearing and go on to the next one. So the first one we'll deal with, Mr. Mills, is?
Yes, sir. The first item is a public hearing on the establishment of a lighting district for the new subdivision at Dunlop Grove on Springdale Road. And Mr. Weckbach, will you be presenting that one?
Good evening, Board. This first public hearing is going to be a lot like the second public hearing. The developer who is developing Dunlap Grove has requested a lighting district be installed on his property. Once the lights are installed, all future costs are going to be passed on to the property owners through their annual assessment, just like all of our other lighting districts within the township. The developer is paying for the streets to actually be installed, or the street lights to be installed themselves. This is literally just the electricity charge that will supply to the lights ongoing. So,
Thank you, sir.
All right. Are there any motions at this time?
I motion that we open a public hearing for the Dunlap Grove Lighting District.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to open up a public hearing for the Dunlap Grove Lighting District. Mr. Baker, roll please.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. Are there any folks here to testify for the public hearing in the Dunlap Grove Lighting District hearing?
You have to.
Well, if you want to testify, you please stand and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay, Ms. Moore? Sorry, your mic's not on them.
As with all lighting districts, once the electric is on, then this cost gets assessed to the property owners in that area.
Yes, ma'am. I think Mr. Weckbach indicated that actually the developer's paying for the installation of the lights. It's just the electricity that will be borne on an annual basis through tax assessment. I can't find Mr. Weckbach.
Okay. Just wanted
I
to
think that's
check.
what he indicated. Yes, okay. Thank you.
If you could please state your name for the record.
Hey, Carrie Davis, how are you all?
Ms. Davis, how you doing?
Just love seeing a woman up there. But anyway, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I haven't researched it or anything, but this appears to me to be lighting on private property. It is not, the parcels aren't divvied up in such a way that the prospective owners have any say in this, and it seems like it defeats the purpose of a petition process for a lighting district. So I didn't devote any time to it, but I feel like you guys are creating a venue for developers to increase the profits on their properties by usurping the rights of prospective owners, because this is not a petition. This is one owner, and you're putting lighting on private property owned by one person. And there aren't even streets in yet. So I think we're manipulating the law a little bit, but I don't know. But I just thought I'd warn you. I think we're skating on thin ice.
Any other comments or concerns with regard to the Dunlop Grove Lighting District? Questions? Mr. Mills? Am open to a motion.
I motion that we close the public hearing for Dunlap Grove Lighting District.
I second.
Any discussion?
Not from me.
Mr. Baker, please call the roll.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. So the Dunlop Grove Lighting District public hearing is closed. At this point, Mr. Weckbach will be presenting the public hearing for Hunter's Ridge 2021 Lighting District, I assume, as he comes to the dais.
Thank you, Board. This is similar to the last item before you. Developers requested that we establish this lighting district to pass along the electricity cost. They are paying for the installation of lights themselves. I know a question that's come up in prior meetings is, why is it called the 2021 Hunters Ridge Lighting District? It's called that just for naming nomenclature on our end, because the lighting district petition process was started in 2021, even though it's being finished now in 2022.
All right,
I
are there any
motion
motion?
that we open a public hearing for the Hunters Ridge 2021 Lighting District.
I second.
So motion by Unger, second by Ulrich, to open up a public hearing on the Hunter Ridge 2021 Lighting District. Any comments to that effect? Seeing none, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. This time, anybody that is interested in testifying in the Hunters Ridge 2021 Lighting District, please indicate, and we will put you under oath. Mr. Solman will give you the oath. Seeing none, are there any?
I will motion that we close the public hearing for the Hunters Ridge 2021 Lighting District.
I second.
So motion by Unger, second by Orich, to close the public hearing on the Hunters Ridge 2021 Lighting District. Any discussion?
Not from me.
No.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. Next, we have item C, a public hearing, sidewalk maintenance assessments, portion of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale. And I see Mr. Weckbach making his way to the front. I assume you will be presenting this as well.
Thank you, Board. So this is the third public hearing of the night. So this one is for sidewalk assessments related to the sidewalk project that we did earlier in the year on the aforementioned streets. Each year, through community development block grant dollars, we've actually been cycling through improving sidewalks throughout our pedestrian infrastructure in our neighborhoods. What we do at the end of the process, after we do the construction and all the public hearings and contracts that go along with that, is we actually then pass along the cost to the owner over a 5-year period through an assessment. So before you today is the public hearing to discuss those potential charges. In the agenda packet, you will actually find the list of the addresses by parcel number, as well as what these assessment amounts are. They're based on the exact amount of square footage that was actually replaced, whether it was sidewalk blocks or the portion of the driveway next to the sidewalks. Later in this agenda, there's actually an item for you all to adopt this and consider this later. So this is just the public hearing to get testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any motions at this time?
I motion that we open a public hearing for the sidewalk maintenance assessments for portions of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale.
I second.
So we have a motion by Unger, second by Ulrich, to open up a public hearing for sidewalks maintenance assessments, portion of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call the roll.
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes. Is there anyone here to testify for the public hearing sidewalk maintenance assessment, portion of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale?
Stand up. Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? I'm still swearing. Yes.
Ms. Davis?
So, last
Mike, could you turn on your mic, please? They turned it off.
pardon me?
The mic, could you turn it on?
I don't know how.
My little voice back here says it's the little button.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, Lord knows. Last week, Dan, you were waving around a paper for assessments where people were losing their houses, and you talked about how much you look forward to reading this edition of how people are getting their houses foreclosed on. It was very sad. But anyway, we're adding to it. And these funds are supposed to be used to help out the poor people in our community, the very people who are appearing in that paper you were talking about. And we are putting more financial burden on them. We are not, usually CBG monies go to alleviate financial issues for families. And while this is consistent with law, we have the right to lump this on them, and they're homeowners and they have a responsibility to keep up their property. The thing is, we're ignoring the fact that next time you get that newspaper and flap it around, laughing about people in dire straits, remember we're contributing to that now. We are adding money to the debts that people owe and who can't afford it. I went through that neighborhood the other day and ran into a couple of the people. One of them was an elderly woman. I said, did you find they did good work? She said, yeah, they did great work. They were quick. They did good work, got me in and out of my driveway quickly. I said, is it affordable? And she said, I'm retired. I'm on Social Security. I'm on a fixed income. And no, it's not affordable to me. And we are not only providing this money to let them fix their home for all of us, but then we're charging them a little bit of interest. And for me and you, that interest rate is like, yeehaw, that's awesome. But if you are on Social Security and you don't have enough money to get food, and pay your medical for your prescriptions, we're taking literally the food and the medicine from some of these families because we are adding to their tax burden. She told me that she pays hers monthly with her mortgage. And so her mortgage, monthly payment's going up. She wasn't sure how much though. But anyway, I would really like to see you guys look at least waiving the interest rates on families who are already pre-registered with the county as being disabled households. They already get the homestead tax deduction, so we know who the poor people are in our community. And if we could actually use that and waive the interest and give them the same deduction that we are giving, that the county has determined is appropriate for them on their tax bill altogether. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The homestead. Do you know, Dan? You're pretty up on this.
Yes, but this is just a time for testimony, and it's not a time for the trustees to comment.
People understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, so there's a process where we identify the people. The other issue I had was the first phase one. You guys did a really excellent job of identifying the homes that needed it. It was in the very poorest areas. But when I did the SVI review of where this phase two is, you know, one thing I asked that woman and a couple others, do you consider yourselves poor? Those houses go for between $125,000 and $200,000. $200,000. This is not the poor neighborhood. This woman I spoke to was elderly, but it's not really the poor neighborhood. And right down the street, we've got people who the SVI income indicates they're making $19,000 a year. So I'd like you to do a better job at identifying. This is one of the most wealthier neighborhoods in the poor neighborhood. So I don't know that we targeted it based on need, which is what the community block grant money's for. So just a couple things to think about, you know, when you go for your next round, and maybe to help these people instead of make them do without food or medicine.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns with regard to the sidewalk maintenance assessment, portions Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale? Any motions at this time?
I would motion that we close the public hearing for sidewalk maintenance assessments for portions of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale.
I second.
Any discussion?
No?
Hearing none, excuse me. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes. All right. All right, so we have a number of citizen comments, and as usual, we like to keep that to a 5-minute maximum, and I'm already going to butcher the first name. Is it Bob Cuff or Cuff?
That's me. Can I request to go after time after
Sure. Mr. Gubser? We'll do Mr. Gubser, then Mr. Cuff. Right. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing? Ralph Gobser, I live at 2870 Sovereign, and I'm sure as most of you know, there's a development being built at the end of Sovereign that will eventually connect Sovereign to Pippin Road, and it'll be from Pippin Road through to Colerain. And Carrie had forwarded an article about the township saying that they're not going to use speed humps or anything like that on their roads, which is fine. I don't want this to get into a speed hump conversation, but we were just wondering, the neighbors were wondering if this does become a problem with excessive traffic or excessive speed on our street, what measures would be available that the township could enforce, you know, to help slow things down. I mean, I know in the past we've had one of the speed trailers on our street, and I know they could put up stop signs and things like that, but, you know, you folks probably know as well as I do, if you look on Colerain Avenue for 5 minutes, you'll see a half dozen people run red lights. So I don't think a stop sign that's, you know, unpatrolled is really going to stop anybody who wants to blast through the neighborhood. And that's basically my question. Is there anything proactive that can be done if that becomes a problem once this opens up, you know, what the township could do about it?
Can Mr. Mills answer those questions during his administrative report, which is when he tends to address all of the, because your next speaker might ask the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
typically that's what we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
If you just hang tight, we will have we will go through the response of all the questions. We're keeping them as we go through.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, is it Mr. Cuff?
Cuffy.
Cuffy, okay.
Will there be a chance to ask a question after the administrative report then?
No, typically it's not a back or forth, but if you have some kind of questions afterwards, you can certainly feel free to contact any one of us. We can get you an answer, or contact Mr. Mills, Mr. Weckback. All three of us, well, two. I don't know if Ms. Ulrich has. We have our personal cell phones up on the township website, so not in the immediacy, but certainly after.
Please approach the mic if
Yeah,
you
why
want
don't
to
you go ahead and come up to the mic so we can get that on the record and they can pick that up. I won't get it wrong a second time, Mr. Cuffy.
So anyway, my name's Bob Cuffy. I'm Ralph's neighbor. I'm on Becky's Ridge. Like Ralph was saying, and I talked to the chief when I showed up way too early. They've done the trailer speed signs, they've done the post speed signs, so obviously there's already a history of having problems with people in excessive speed. I've lived there 16 years. I drove a truck, so I make it a point to go the speed limit. Either way you're going, ingress, egress, if you go the speed limit, somebody will be close enough where you can read your lips through your rearview mirror by the time you get where you're going, so it's already an issue. I wouldn't underestimate the attractiveness of that as a cut through to anybody north or east, Pippin and thereabouts, that's going to try to use that. And speed bumps work even better if you're a little proactive on it. If you were to actually finish that and open it up and have speed bumps, I prefer the kind, if you've ever been through Hyde Park, if you're familiar with those, they're probably double the width of the table you folks are sitting at. They come with signs warning people, because if you don't slow down, you'll be smacking your head on the inside of your vehicle. So, and if you put those in right from the get-go, teenagers won't be tempted to see how fast they can get from Pippin Road to Colerain and then beyond. So I would recommend it. And like I said, it's already an issue there. If you put them in from the get-go, it'll be way more effective than waiting and taking that, how many people have been hit at this railroad crossing approach, to doing some kind of measure for safety. Yeah, these are most likely going to be people with kids that you want to move into these homes, and they would probably appreciate people observing speed limits and being safe. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cuffey. Next up on the list, Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis, yes. You're the next one in my stack here. Well, no, you're not the last. There's two after you, but yeah.
Okay. On the sidewalk issue, or on the, a couple things, I was wondering, Mr. Mills, if you could tell us at the end, when you do your report, if there's going to be any steps that's going to be taken because the county has issued a state of emergency. The issue with Sovereign, I don't know if you guys remember, but you guys promised that neighborhood that you would work with them before that neighborhood opened up, and you would design the appropriate traffic mitigation measures, including possible speed humps to be placed back there. And I don't think you guys have scheduled a meeting with them. I think Mr. Mills might actually enjoy some of the possibilities, because that street is so wide. I mean, you could actually put an island at these intersections and really slow down traffic and beautify the neighborhood. But I would ask that you guys schedule something with Mr. Gubster and actually make a plan on how you're going to address the traffic that we know is going through there. We don't have to wait for a kid to be hit, an old lady to be run over. We know what's coming, and I would like to see you all make a meeting with them and discuss that beforehand and alleviate their concerns before the for sale signs go up. The third thing I want to talk about is after over a decade of Colerain Township not being able to do anything to stop Rumpke, the Board of Commissioners did pass the rules to regulate Rumpke. It was a very hard-fought battle. Now we get to do the deep dive, but now the Hamilton County Board of Commissioners adopted my proposal to have veto power over the Ohio EPA. So now Colerain Township will be able to go to their Board of Commissioners, and this township, instead of spending millions in legal fees, will be able to ask their commissioners to represent them in any legal issues with Rumpke. Matt is on the agenda today to be approved to be placed on the committee. I'm very, I don't think you getting $7.5 thousand from Rumpke. It is not a legal ethical violation because that's for your campaign. So that doesn't create a conflict of interest, neither does it with Miss Ulrich receiving $8,000 and Mr. Unger taking $8,000 also from Rumpke Township now. But I was wondering if anybody had a legal opinion on whether or not the township itself has a conflict of interest in being on the committee, because we have a private settlement agreement with Rumpke that puts 6 to 7 figures in our pockets that is not statutorily provided. So I would like to see or know tonight if you have gotten that legal opinion. I spoke to the Ohio Ethics Commission, and they said they do not issue opinions on that issue. It is not within their purview. So this is organizational to organizational. You guys have, the township having a benefit. So I think it's really inappropriate for anybody from Colerain Township, the entity, being on this committee, because you have a vested interest in letting Rumpke continue to bring in garbage from every county around our county. You guys have not given any announcements to the community. This is about probably the biggest legislation that directly impacts Colerain Township residents. You guys have made no announcements about it. You have not educated anybody about it. You have not told them where they're to go with their stench complaints or anything like that. You've totally ignored this and acted like this major legislative victory did not happen. And I would like to see you educate your community on the benefits of the county stepping forward and adopting my proposal. By the way, it was really fun to work with people who, when you propose something, don't ignore you and shoot it down immediately, that they actually look at it. And the result of it is we have an EPA now who will be vetoed by our Board of Commissioners if they believe that expansion at Rumpke is detrimental to our residents right here.
Thank you. Doris Hobner. Hi, how you doing?
Doris Hobner, 4459 Day Road. I'm here to address the proposed move of the City of Cincinnati Police Department's gun range to Colerain Township, which I'm strongly against. The communities surrounding the current CPD range describe it as a war zone. Understandably, they want the range moved as it significantly and adversely affects the quality of life of their residents, their property values, and economic development in the area. I'm urging fellow Colerain Township residents to Google City of Cincinnati Police Gun Range and research this. Visit the site, theheightsmovement.org, to hear how city residents feel about the range. A few quotes for you. Invite your family out and spend the night. Let them all come and see. Do they feel the same way we feel about this going on 24 hours? And the gun range is a quality of life issue causing post-traumatic stress and other adverse issues for children growing up nearby. I'm not sure if this statistic is correct, but I've read that the current range logs approximately 50,000 hours of shooting annually. Do the math and think about the sheer number of hours of shooting this is on a daily basis at both indoor and outdoor settings. From articles I have read and interviews I have heard with civic leaders in the Lincoln Heights, Evendale, and Woodlawn areas, the only site being considered to move the range to is an expansion of the existing Hamilton County Sheriff's gun range on East Miami River Road. I also understand from our Colerain trustees that they cannot stop the county from moving the CPD range to this location if they decide to do it. At best, you can try to minimize its negative impact on the community. But we, the residents of Colerain Township, should have the ability to say no to the city's problem being moved into our backyard. While I understand that most residents of Colerain Township will not be affected by this, I myself will unlikely hear this. It doesn't mean that everyone should not care. All quality of life issues for all members of our township should be important to everyone. Today, it's the northwest corner of the township. Tomorrow, it's your neighborhood. Please get involved and make your voice heard. Colerain residents, join me in telling our trustees, the Hamilton County Commissioners, and the City of Cincinnati council members The Colerain Township is not a dumping ground for the city's problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Ms. Moore? Good evening.
Good evening. And welcome, Ms. Ulrich, to the board. I gave you each a copy of an invoice from Merkel, and I asked if you think that's sufficient information. I would think they would tell us what area they covered, or how many hours, or what the weight of the litter that they picked up was. I just don't think that that was the agreed price and you just send an invoice. There should be some documentation with it. Another thing is, according to the minutes, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've had proclamations for citizens and other people, and the minutes reflect that the proclamations are available in the agenda packet. The agenda is not a permanent record, and I believe that any proclamations should be signed and attached to the meeting minutes. You held an organizational meeting, was held last week. It was stated as an organizational meeting. However, transfer of funds and hiring an employee were also approved. That does not fall under the purpose of an organizational meeting. I've noticed that you have approved many policies for the policy manual. However, there is still not one for donations and gifts, other than the township being on the receiving end. Without a policy, does that mean that anything is acceptable? It was recommended by the state auditor to establish a policy in the 2018-2019 audit, 2 years ago, and the board has failed to act on that. As far as new hires, Mr. Mills states an hourly amount for employees when they're hired. And when you just give a dollar amount, does that mean that they are exempt or non-exempt from any overtime? If it's a salary employee, I believe that you should say $85,000 instead of $40 and something an hour. A procedure for hiring should also be adopted by the board. And it should be followed for all applicants and employees. Why someone is interviewed 2 or 3 times without even applying for a position looks like cronyism. Does any trustee or administrative employee have a personal, professional, or political relationship with Mr. Miller prior to his last-minute hiring? He did not provide a resume until he was going to be hired. Every applicant should go through the same process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McVeigh? Good evening, sir.
Evening.
On the way in, I thanked Chief Wells for his compassion, and I thank you too for providing this shelter for the people who had lost their heat over the weekend. He was walking the talk in doing that, and I thank him for that. On benches, as I recall, we previously had a commitment from the SORTA CEO to install 4 benches and trash receptacles in the township. SORTA concedes the need for bus stops with 26 riders to have benches, and for your data, 6 locations in the township meet that criteria. The bus stops are littered with trash and need trash receptacles. This is obvious to all who travel along Colerain Avenue. Bus stops need to be set up to encourage housekeeping. This includes benches, trash receptacles, signage, and the proper concrete and/or paver foundation. We don't just set these things in grass. As it now stands, Colerain residents are contributing over $7 million a year to SORTA in this tax increase. 75% goes to SORTA and 25% go to roads that are within 25%, within a half a mile of a bus route. SORTA riders on average are covering less than 10% of the fare expense. They're getting a free ride and they're trashing our neighborhood. And we need to fix that. And benches alone won't do it. Moving on, Rumpke. Several meetings ago, I shared with you that Rumpke odors are in violation of the Ohio Revised Code and our consent decree. Simply, landfills are required to operate and not produce nuisances, and odors are defined as nuisances. In 2021, Rumpke odor complaints were 4 times larger than all the total complaints for odors in Hamilton County. Rumpke odor complaints are at least 19 times greater than the next largest offender. EPA data from 2019 reveals Rumpke landfill emitted over 54,000 tons of methane gas and is the largest landfill polluter in the United States. Last year, 2,130 tanker trucks of leachate were trucked away from the landfill to MSD because the leachate is too corrosive for the sewer system up here. Now, leachate is the result of the underground fire that continues at the landfill. Data reveals the north section is sinking about 10 feet per year in some sections. Monthly wellhead data from the land site reveals that between 10 and 20% of the wellheads are out of control each month. Rumpke is expanding this landfill using the same technology they employ to operate the existing facility. They are grandfathered from needing to employ the very latest and best technology. Since Rumpke continues to deny there is an underground fire and the cause of same is undetermined, it's quite likely that this will occur in the expanded landfill. You know, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Trustees need to take action to ensure that the EPA brings the landfill into concurrence. You are the accountable body. Let me repeat that. You are the accountable body. You need to say to the EPA, it's not working. Our residents are suffering. Our property values are plummeting as well compared to other neighbors that don't have this problem. You can't run away from this any longer. The #1 methane producer in the U.S. from a landfill standpoint, in violation of Ohio Revised Code, in violation of your consent decree. Now, I understand they gave you $2 million a year. They owe this because that was what they agreed to. That's not being a good citizen. That's owning up to your commitments. Now I need to have you guys. You are the accountable line. If you don't act, this problem will continue, and lives are at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. I believe that's all we have as far as citizen comments or citizen address. Move on to administrative reports. Mr. Mills, I have a number of questions. Do you want to start with those?
Sure.
Okay. From citizen address, sorry.
Mr. Guff and Mr. Cuffey, I wanted to put up, if I'm able to do this.
Are you on, Mike?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Come on. All right, so this is going to pop up here in just a second.
As he's bringing that up, thank you so much
Thank you
for
for
coming
coming in
and
tonight.
joining us and doing the pledge.
Enjoyed seeing you all.
Have a good day at school tomorrow at St. James.
I went to St. James too, so go Panthers.
All right, Mr. Mills?
That was my traffic
So
call.
to answer your question real directly, there is a way to petition the Board of Trustees to put traffic calming devices like speed bumps, speed tables, chicane, anything that you guys would want. And that's in our policy book, which you can get online. If you go to our website, Colerain.
want to petition you.
If you go to our,
why they were here tonight. They don't want to petition you.
Ma'am, you're out of order. Thank you.
if you go to our website, which is colerain.org, and that'll take you to this page here. And then if you go down to transparency, there we go. And then scroll down and the policy manual is right there. Okay, that's how you get to this information. Click on the 2020 policy book, December here, and then that'll pull up all of our policies. The traffic calming device policy is in there. That outlines the way in which trustees hear residents request traffic calming devices.
I have a copy here too, if you want one.
So that's that would be my suggestion, and it's pretty simple. I can read it to you if you'd like, but you know you can also go online and check it out for yourself. So,
Mr. Mills, that said, perhaps you could say a few words about the design
oh sure, yeah. So,
that the contractor currently has for traffic calming.
yeah, so it is not going to be a straight shot from Colerain to Pippin. There's I don't think this is the technical term, but I call it a knuckle in the road. So you have to go to a stop sign and go around and then go down the hill to Pippin. Yeah, like an offset. So to try to prevent the speeding to the greatest extent possible. But there's a whole stretch of Sovereign before you get there that you probably know about right now and people already speed on. So I understand. So that's how that works. Let's see. Ms. Davis asked what steps the county are taking, or the township is taking due to the county's declaration of state of emergency for COVID. That just occurred an hour or 2 hours or several hours ago, so we don't have any steps that we've taken in that's a short amount of time. Is there another, does the township have an ethical issue due to tipping fees? Oh, no, I think you asked, did we get a legal opinion as to whether or not the township has an ethical issue due to the collection of tipping fees and settlement agreement? The answer is no, we do not have a legal opinion on that topic. I don't believe Ms. Hobner, I don't think there are any questions there, it's just statements. Ms. Moore asked if the invoice from Merkel was sufficient. I don't have a copy of that, so I can't answer that. Proclamations, let me see here. Oh, establish a policy for donation. That's in the agenda tonight for a first reading. So our policy book, there's several updates that are being made, or proposed rather, and those are in the agenda for a first reading, including update to the donation policy. There is a procedure for hiring. It's in our policy book. Same place, same document that the traffic calming device policy is in. There's a hiring policy. Mr. Miller, like every other candidate, submitted his resume and application, just like everybody else. It was the same process. So so that's that. And then Mr. McVeigh, I don't think there's any questions there, but I will say, but he's gone. I will say to Mr. McVeigh's point, currently we have, at a previous trustee meeting, the board has approved the distribution of 10 trash receptacles, and then the weekly servicing or picking up of trash at each of those 10 receptacles. Those are going to go on Colerain Avenue, and there's a proposal tonight to put 4 benches. There is a project under design right now that will build another 2 benches, so we would have 6 benches in the township if that is approved, in fact, tonight. So those are the updates. Those are the answers to the questions that I have written down. Did I miss any?
No, if you, and I get this question quite a bit, if you want to, do you want to kind of expand on the gun range
Oh, sure.
situation a little bit?
That's a
And
great question.
tell people where it's at and.
Sure. So the Board of County Commissioners, in particular Commissioner Driehaus, and the Cincinnati City Council, and in particular Vice Mayor Lemon Kearney, those are the 2 folks that are leading this charge. They have finally gotten to the point where there are renderings for what the gun range would look like down on East Miami River Road, and we're talking about, I think you might have mentioned the northwest corner of the township. This is actually the southwest corner of the township. This will be south of Blue Rock is where they're proposing. There's a gun range there currently. It's used by the sheriff's office, so this would expand that gun range. And really, we use the term gun range a lot, but it's actually more than just a gun range. It is, there's something called a skid pad that they would be able to do training on, like vehicle training, pulling people over and stuff like that. And then there's a dog, like a canine dog training area. So there's sort of three things at that training center. They have renderings now, and they would like to present that to the Colerain Township residents. And so my hope is, once this COVID thing calms down, or if we can do it virtually or in person, we've got to figure out a way, but they want to come out and do a sort of a town hall conversation where the architects come out and talk about what it actually is, where it is. You can see renderings, what they're doing to reduce issues related to sound, and answer any questions that you have. So that's coming, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and sign up for our Circle news updates. That way you'll be sure to know when that is. I would anticipate it would be within the next 4 to 6 weeks. So there will be another opportunity to share that perspective and learn more about the project.
And the commissioner and vice mayor have indicated on a number of cases, situations where they've discussed with you and I that they want the buy-in from the community. They don't want to be somewhere where they don't want to be wanted. Yeah. So the idea that this is somehow a done deal, first of all, the city of Cincinnati and the county need to come up with
a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. And there's not a legacy of them cooperating together to begin with. It appears as if the new city council has a different set of priorities. So the idea that this is somehow right around the corner, and that's in terms of time, I don't think is really accurate. And they don't want to come here if we don't want them. And Commissioner Driehaus specifically said that to me a number of times. She wants it to be an open meeting. So there'll be opportunities to kind of express our points of view then. I think, did I characterize that?
That's exactly right, yeah. Yep. Okay, so as far as my administrative report this evening, board, we are in the opening of the year mode. So opening lots of POs to get ready for all the work that gets done in the township. We are setting up all of our initiatives for executing the strategic plan and moving the township down the path that you guys have set out so we can achieve your vision. So that is really what's taking a lot of our time. We do have several administrative reports, and we can begin with the fire department and Chief Walls.
Chief, welcome back. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening once again. I'll have statistics for December 2021, then I'll have a comparison between 2020 and 2021. So in December, we had 895 EMS incidents. We had 192 fire incidents. We made 50 responses into the Springfield Township EMS contract area. We had the one building fire in the 3700 block of West Galbraith Road with a $15,000 loss. Our average response time for the arrival of the first unit was 5 minutes and 37 seconds. And our first unit on the scene less than 6 minutes was 63.44%. In comparing 2020 to 2021, so we saw an 8% increase in responses from 2020 to 2021. In 2020, we made 10,503 responses. In 2021, we made 11,336 responses. We saw an increase in our average response time for the arrival of the first unit from 5 minutes and 15 seconds in 2020 to 5 minutes and 22 seconds in 2021. Then we saw a decrease in our first unit on the scene at less than 6 minutes from 70.32% to 63.44%. So response is up, average response time up, and our first unit getting on the scene less than 6 minutes went down. So hopefully all that makes sense because things are moving in the wrong direction. We're only getting busier, our response time is going up, and our percentage of runs less than 6 minutes is going down.
What do you attribute all the difference of incidences?
You know, it's 7 seconds and about 3%, and quite frankly, just the sheer volume. You know, that 8% increase is going to stress
What the
resources.
8% increase, what were the
They were across the board.
Okay, not one thing in particular. Okay.
Yeah, we, 9,368 EMS incidents total, and then 1,968 fire incidents
Okay.
total. So we saw increases across the board.
Okay.
And usually we see about a 4 to 6% increase, but this past year was 8%. So I think this is the highest number of responses we've ever had in a year.
And there's COVID.
I was just going to ask if it was COVID related with the incidences.
And there's COVID. So we were 5 runs short of 900 EMS responses in December, and we've never hit that. So busy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. The next administrative report is in the Police Department, and Chief Denny.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Board. For the month of December, our officers responded to 3,668 calls for service, and their average response time to emergency calls was 2.3 minutes. Our officers conducted 52 traffic stops and made 11 OVI arrests. And compared to 2021, we responded to 43,722 calls, so we had a 6% increase in our call volume as well. So, and much like Chief Wall stated, it's kind of across the board, and has a lot to do with the fact that people are now getting back out, and a lot of normal activities are resuming, which unfortunately includes calling the police. Officers made 1,100 traffic stops with 95 DUI arrests and 1,100 physical arrests.
Did you say 95?
95.
Well, that's a huge jump.
That's we average around 100 traditionally if you look back over the years, but last year obviously was an off year. 2020 was a.
Oh, that was the year.
Yeah, it was for the
Oh,
year.
I'm sorry. I thought you said
We made
month.
11 in December.
I
and
thought
then
you meant 95 in December. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah, they were out there. We just didn't catch all that many. Out of those 1,100 arrests, we had 20 uses of force. So that's under 2% of our arrests that end up in a use of force. And we had 26 pursuits. Our code enforcement officer handled 2,297 complaints last year, abated 88 and referred 26 of those to housing court. And what's interesting about that 26 is that the year before there were 79. So I think that we can attribute that to the fact that we've got Officer Boyne out there actually talking to people, working with our residents, and making sure that those things get taken care of before it goes to housing court. So I think that's a success for our program in that. Total crime dropped 5%. Property crime was down 8%, and violent crime stayed exactly the same. So we got some work to do still, but those are encouraging numbers.
Absolutely. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
Chief, and I know that I lamented with you, I texted you about the Supreme Court decision, the state of Ohio, with the individual that was was arrested for allegedly killing someone in June or July. And the original trial judge set the bail at $1.5 million, and it was reduced to $500,000, right? Yes. And the interesting part of the decision was that we can no longer use, I forget how the Supreme Court worded it, but like violence or the instance they might repeat an offense, an alleged offense, is a way. It should be the least restrictive means possible to provide bail, which I found to be troubling at best.
Traditionally, that's been one of the biggest reasons that you look at the danger to the community is one of the main reasons. That, and of course showing up for court, are the main reasons for that bail. But yeah, that was unfortunate.
And that individual's own family, not the victim's family, but the alleged perpetrator's family, said, we're afraid of them.
This person's already murdered somebody.
Right.
We were very disappointed in that as well.
Mm. But thank you so much for the hard work. And I forgot to mention yesterday, was yesterday National Law Enforcement
Yes.
Day?
Sunday?
Sunday.
Sunday, yes.
Sunday. Days all come together, but belated National Law Enforcement Day.
Quickly on this issue on sovereign, what we've done in the past, we've conducted testing periods beforehand so we can gauge what the actual incidents and what the problems are and what time of day that happens, and it helps us pinpoint our enforcement efforts. So we're going to do that. We're going to set them up. The signs will be off, but up, so it gives us an idea of what's really going on when we're not watching. Then we'll turn the signs on and get a good idea if that had a good impact or not. So we can do that on your street.
Thanks, Chief. Can I ask you what your opinion of some other mitigation method like a speed bump would be in that stretch there? What's your personal opinion?
We did our study in Northbrook. Pretty overwhelmingly, the speed signs showed the most promise, believe it or not. That having a posted speed sign that gave feedback to the drivers would almost as much as the speed bumps. And the nice thing about the speed signs is they don't damage the roadway, and we can move them to different areas if we need to without incurring a bigger cost. So there was some encouraging data from those speed signs that we hoped would come out that way.
Thank you for indulging us. The bumps are more effective, but they would have some problems.
If you will send me your email, I can actually give you periodic updates on that report because it actually prints out an update for us, and I can absolutely give that to you.
So for those that didn't hear at home, on the question was about to the chief about other mitigating factors for traffic calming, and the chief has available reports that are periodically updated on what the statistics show with regard to different options that we've used.
Great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
The next administrative report comes from the Department of Public Services and will be given by Assistant Administrator Jeff Weckbach.
Hey, welcome back, Mr. Weckbach.
Hello again, board. So, first item up for you all is our park visitorship. So, as you all may or may not know, we track park visitors in 3 of our most popular parks. That's Heritage, Colerain, and Clippard. On the whole, visitorship is down, and there are 2 reasons for that. The height of the pandemic in 2020 caused a lot of people to actually come into our parks and use our trails and amenities because it was one of the few things we could do while everything was shut down. But really, the bigger factor is we split the cut through in Clippard Park so that now cars can no longer cut through the parking lot. We saw a dramatic decrease there. So when you look at all 3 parks independently, Clippard Park saw a huge drop off in visitorship numbers in 2021 as compared to 2020. Heritage Park was slightly down, maybe about 8,000 individuals, but Colerain Park was up a significant amount, and we attribute that a lot to the goats this summer, as well as the new playground that was unveiled. So we think that providing those new amenities really drew a whole new breadth of individuals to our parks. And when we put the new playground in, we said it was going to be a regional draw, and so far we think it's been accomplishing that. Some of our other numbers, these are just our service requests for the year. These are the citizen requested items next year. So starting as soon as 2 weeks ago, we actually implemented a new way that we're going to be tracking these. So it's going to be less about what types of complaints and requests for service do we get, and more about what are we actually proactively doing. So the report's going to look a little different. It's going to be focused more on hours that were spent doing certain activities, so hours that were out actually doing, say, basin repairs or pothole fixes, or any number of items that we normally do on a day in and day out basis, just to kind of show and demonstrate to you all where we're putting most of our efforts from a public works perspective. And then our final items are related to litter reporting. You'll see a huge number in December. That's inflated artificially because that is when CCA, the Colerain Community Association, reported to us how many bags of trash they actually collected over the past year. It was 650 bags of trash. So that's a huge number. And that's part of the reason why we see that number in total at over 1,000 for the month of December. But we're seeing great numbers coming out of our litter laborers. Our volunteers that are stepping up are also reporting, and they're also getting out and doing a lot of great things. So we're really encouraged by this collective community effort around litter. And as a final note, outside of all the stats and data, we did have a snow run just a few weeks ago, or should I say an ice run, and I think the crews did a great job, and I want to thank them and commend them for their hard work getting out there and keeping our streets as clean as possible.
Mr. Reckbeck, question for you. So there's an individual, I think we may have talked about this at one point, at Chick-fil-A that goes through the parking lot and picks up all the trash. And what's that?
Did they hire her? She lives over at Villages Northgate?
I don't know if we can call, if she's camera shy, I'd like to recognize, I think she's in her.
She's in her 90s.
Helen.
Yeah.
Okay. It's Helen.
Okay,
I knew
she was 90.
I was trying to tread carefully on that. I knew that she was seasoned, older than me, 98 years old. And I've seen her in cold weather and in warm weather going through that parking lot and picking up every bit of trash, including cigarette butts, cigarette butts and everything, and it's just, I mean, it's just incredible to see her, and I don't know if there's a way we can talk to Chick-fil-A and get her honored, or even if she wants to be honored. I know some people don't want that kind of attention.
And she's been doing it for years. I know somebody brought this up to me probably shortly after I got here 4 years ago. So maybe I need to get with Chris and see if I can find out some contact information
Okay.
for her and track that down. So
Great.
Thanks. All
thank you,
right.
board.
And that wraps up our administrative reports for the evening.
All right, moving on now to trustees' reports.
I'll go first.
All right.
Thank you, Matt. I'll comment on some of the things that were brought up during the different citizens that spoke. One of our speakers made a comment that there are no streets in Dunlap Grove. That was made earlier. In fact, there are. I've gone back and driven on them. The streets are in, the curbs are in. I did not see any starts of any housing or foundations, but the streets, in fact, are in place. The site is cleared. As far as the sidewalk assessments, you are compelled to keep up your property, and yes, and I ended up, yes, I paid to replace my own. I replaced about 77 feet of sidewalk in 2017 in front of my house because it was sunken, and the cross slope on it had sank since 1973 when it was installed. So nobody is immune from taking care of their property. I realize that there are people in various financial straits. With this program, we front the money to the homeowners, and it is paid back on subsequent property tax bills. There was a comment made about Rumpke produces 54,000 tons of methane gas. To those of us who have taken a tour of the facility, there is a plant back there that captures a lot of that and processes it and cleans it, and it is estimated that it provides enough natural gas or methane to heat 10,000 homes a year. And so that methane is not escaping into the atmosphere. I'm sure with anything, anywhere, there's methane escaping, not just from Rumpke, but from anything organic that is in whatever stage of decomposition. But Rumpke captures a lot of that. It's not going into the atmosphere. Putting islands in the middle of a street as a traffic calming, I would not advocate for that. One of the worst enemies of pavement is when water gets under the pavement, and putting an island with landscaping in it in the middle of a street, which I don't think the streets are wide enough to tolerate an island on Sovereign, and maybe they are, maybe they're not, but they're not when you start running school buses and longer wheelbase vehicles through there. That's like putting a funnel in the middle of the pavement to allow stormwater to get into the island, and it migrates out under the pavement. And I watch these people that plant trees in these islands, and certainly that root spread is going to grow out about as wide as the tree canopy. And so instead of compacted gravel under the street, you've got organic roots, which ultimately over the long term loosens the base under the street and causes a short design life on new pavements. There was a flippant comment made about the board doesn't care about running over children and senior citizens, and I'll leave it at that. That, of course, we care about that. That's balderdash to say such a thing. The trash receptacles, as Jeff stated in his administrative report, we approved those at the last meeting, but I think the citizen who said that they aren't there wasn't there for that part of the meeting. He's not here right now. When I was a very young person, I did go to the gun range in Lincoln Heights, and in fact, it was with that Cub Scout group because they took us out to the gun range to teach us gun safety and how to shoot, and that was a long time ago, and I think it would, for you, Mrs. Hobner, and for anybody else, it might be an idea to go visit the gun range in Lincoln Heights and see what it is and how it is, and contemplate what would happen if it would move here. And as you correctly stated, it is the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County that are ultimately going to cite that. I speak as one trustee. I am going to do my best to negotiate into that whatever we can for noise suppression and landscaping or whatever else, but the county is ultimately going to do what they are going to do. In addition, I would certainly, and I've talked to our chief about this, I take pride in the fact that I think we run the best department in the county with the least amount of complaints from citizens, and I think training is critical, and I'm hopeful that this gives us a chance even more to keep our skills sharp, to keep our marksmanship up to date, and hopefully never, ever have to use a firearm, in a live action, with the public. So the best way to do that is to be well-trained, and I'm hopeful that that's something that comes out of the gun range if, in fact, the county does decide to locate it here. I think we had somebody make a comment about Mr. Miller. I have met him previously. I have no relationship to him. I'm not related to him. Recently, he was Betsy Sunderman's either chief of staff or office assistant or whatever his position was. I was surprised to see that he had applied out here. I took some other notes. Let me see if I've covered everything. The invoice from Merkel, I do have a copy of it. I recall we approved an amount to do that. That seems consistent with this invoice. In fact, it does not mention where the litter removal was, and maybe on subsequent invoices it could mention, something like 10,000 Colerain Avenue to 7,000 Colerain Avenue, but that's more of an administrative thing for Mr. Mills to deal with. And I hope everybody's New Year is off to a good start. As Mr. Weckbach said, we've been pretty lucky with the weather so far, and personally, I've had enough cold temperatures already. So I will yield the rest of my time, Mr.
Okay, I agree with Mrs. Moore. I think there should be more detail on this bill about where it's been cleaned up and how much they are hauling away. So I do agree with that. And to address the citizens, what Carrie had said about the financial burden, if you look at the proposed monies, the highest amount is $47 a month. They range from $5 or $4 a month to $47. So I hope that isn't that much of a financial burden for those people to keep up their properties. And we are looking at the gift with other townships to put the gift donation that you had talked about. And that's all.
All right, thank you. So for my report, a couple responses to some citizen comments. Ms. Moore, you're 3 for 3. I do agree that it needs to be a little bit more specific on that invoice. And I don't know what the rule is with proclamations, but if I got a proclamation, I would probably want it in the meeting minutes for prosperity, because I don't get many proclamations. We're working on the policy donations and gifts. Sorta so sorta is a little bit of a sore subject with the $7 million annual cost to Colerain residents for sorta, and kind of, I think our position is let's try to get what we can out of them in terms of grants to get some of that money back in the community. And I realize that they've made a commitment to trash receptacles and benches at one point in time. I think that was a kind of a moving target. We've gone ahead and contracted with Rumpke to pick up those trash receptacles, because ultimately, the goal for me is to have a better looking community. Interestingly enough, I talked to, I met with Michelle Baltz from Solid Waste to talk about the rules and how they applied, the new rules that appeared. I had about an hour and a half meeting with her down at the Martin Luther King at the Board of Health, and found out a lot of interesting stuff. I can't believe I've come to be the recycle guy, because she mentioned that there's about 20% of the people she'll never reach. And I'm like, you know what? About 8-10 years ago, I was one of those 20%, and I have a recycle bin now, and I recycle everything. I'm not the guy that takes the pop can and crushes it up and puts it in his book bag for later. Maybe I'll get there, but we do get money back for everything that we produce. And some of the statistics she gave me were just incredible. That, like right now, the box industry, there's a box industry, and they need recycled boxes desperately. I mean, it's a great opportunity, and it to kind of lessen our footprint. And I was very happy with that meeting. I'm meeting Monday with the mayor of Florence, because I taught 2 of her kids years ago at St. Henry. Because Florence is one of those areas that has a mall, but the mall is not the entire footprint of Mall Road. and they've managed to do a lot of beautification, and I am going to steal every idea I can from her, and, whatever I can to kind of apply it to Colerain. I think it's important. The one thing I stress to my students all the time with government is find out if you're a student and do this, if you find out what other people do and copy their paper, you're going to be in big trouble. If you're a government, you're lauded and celebrated, and that's exactly what I plan to do with that. I'm meeting tomorrow evening with the head of the Better Bus Coalition, Mr. Hardy, and talking about some of the issues that we have with bus issues in the trash, and later on we're going to be talking about benches. And I'd just like to thank Mr. Baker informed me about the power outage. Was this Saturday morning at 2 a.m. is when it went out, I think?
That's correct.
Okay, and I didn't know it at the time, and it's amazing because when he told me within an hour, we had the chief of police, we had the chief of fire, we had Mr. Weckback, we had Mr. Mills, we had everybody working to find solutions, and my concern immediately was, man, it's cold. And then the other concern is that there was a large delay between when that was reported by our police department. It was a result, there were 2 power outages, both results of accidents in very tricky places. The first one, there was a delay in reporting and getting a crew to come out and fix it. I know that Mr. Mills, Mr. Weckback, and myself will be on a conference call with Duke Energy, I think Thursday, to see what went wrong so that doesn't happen again. And all 3 of us, I think, called up the government relations person on Saturday and said, look, this is just not acceptable. Fix it. It ended up, it was a tricky fix too, but I don't ever want that to happen again where there's a big gap in, if you can't fix it, that's one thing, but if you can't fix it, but you haven't reported it, or you haven't gotten the crews out, then that's a different issue, and I think that Duke agrees that that's something that they don't want to ever see again. The other thing I will bring up, and I brought up last meeting, probably, I guess, a new business or old business, is I do want to increase the number of speed signs for Northbrook. And last time I motioned to purchase some to continue with that policy. Mr. Cuffey, you indicated with the chief, the data that we have shocked me. I thought that the speed bumps would be much more successful, but the signs are a lot cheaper and they're just as successful. And from the very beginning of the sovereign development, we've been committed to, number one, bringing in single-family homes because we felt that rentals in that area would negatively impact property values and things like that. And we did whatever we could to bring in single-family homes, and we're happy that that's a plan that the developer's going with. And the second thing is to mitigate any possible traffic issues, because we do realize that there's going to be a strong draw to use things as a cut-through. I mean, I'm the guy that cuts across Joseph to get to Pool Road about 4 times a day to just miss like 20 feet of Colerain Avenue, so I imagine people are going to go to larger extents, and we want to make that safe. Absolutely 100% want to make that safe. I think that I've covered, also, everybody, Happy New Year, and the last thing I'll say, non-government related, is Who Day Saturday. So thank you.
Matt, can I have another moment for trustee report? I wrote
Are you going
down
to say
some
something
notes.
positive about the Raiders?
I say go Bengals.
Okay, go ahead.
But no, one of the other comments, and I missed this when I said it the first time, one of our citizens spoke this evening about her going to you mentioned solid waste district, going to the solid waste district and getting some new rules for landfill expansion. And, Rumpke has a landfill operation out on Bond Road. And I think their vision for the future is that, let's face it, there's continues to be a lot of growth in the Harrison area in southeast Indiana, and I think over the next 30 years, there's just going to be a lot of growth there. And, as people start working from home more and more and the culture changes, and I think that their thinking was that would save them from hauling a lot of trash to our landfill here, to Rumpke's landfill in Colerain Township. So I think the end result, one of the results of this, and I hope it doesn't come out that way, but I would guess that all that trash in the next 30 years from southeast Indiana is probably headed here when, Rumpke was trying to develop something that was not in Colerain Township. So that might be the results of Kerry's efforts, is to bring more trash to Colerain Township. And I think that I did read what she said. I don't think we've had a meeting since she did that, and she's wondering why we're not singing the praises of it. This is our first meeting where it's, where that new rule has come up, and I don't really understand it, but my interpretation of it is that because of that, I think that landfill out there is limited to maybe 100 tons a day, and the result of Kerry's efforts is the mountain that is Rumpke is going to grow bigger and bigger because they won't be able to divert all their trash from west of Cincinnati to, I have no interest in having trash here from southeast Indiana. I'd just as soon it was kept close to there, and I think that's right on the state line, so that'll be the result of her efforts, is a lot more trash deposited in Rumpke's Colerain Township landfill. So I did want to address that. She asked why we hadn't talked about it. That's my initial read on it. So thank you for the additional time, Chairman.
Yes, sir. All right, if there are no other questions on the new business, I don't know if you want me to make my motion for the speed signs now or go to old business, since it was already discussed at a previous meeting. Do it old business. It's shorter list, so.
There we go.
All right, so we'll go to you for public safety.
Outstanding, thank you. We have 2 items of new business in public safety, both from the police department. First one is a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement. Chief?
Hello again. First item is recommend adoption of a resolution declaring a nuisance and ordering abatement on uncontrolled vegetation or refuse and debris reported at the following properties: 3396 Blue Rock, 2631 Galbraith, 3091 Galbraith, 9824 Lorelinda, and 9649 Pippin.
I would motion that we approve the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement at the properties the chief has described.
I second that.
Any discussion?
Not from me.
Mr. Mills or Chief, I'm having a problem. What page is that exact?
61.
61, okay. Yeah, I need to get, sometimes this thing closes down on me, Adobe, and then I can't find
That's
where
why I
I
printed it
Do
out.
you, I've got it right here if you need it.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that I'm following along. All right, any discussion for or against?
None.
Reaction? All right, thank you so much, Chief. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Second item is recommend adoption of a resolution declaring a vehicle located at 3 vehicles loaded at 3084 Galbraith Road as a junk motor vehicle and causing for the removal pursuant to Colerain Township Resolution 3621. The first vehicle is a tan Chevy Malibu, 2011. Second's a dark green BMW 740 Series, 1997, no license plate. And the third is a green rust Chevy Suburban, 1995, no plates.
Any motions?
I motion that we approve the resolution declaring the vehicles located at 3084 Galbraith Road as junk motor vehicles and causing for removal pursuant to Colerain Township Resolution number 36-21. That would be the 3 vehicles there.
I second.
Motion by Unger, second by Ulrich. Any discussion?
None.
None for me. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. The new BMWs will change color. That'll make it harder to do.
How was that gonna, well, when somebody said I saw a gray, no, a black, no, I thought about that when somebody's trying to get an eyewitness account on a car.
Now, Mr. Waller, you had asked if I would
Yes.
summarize what just happened after we do these resolutions. So the first resolution requires the board to declare a nuisance and then gives us the authorization to either cut the grass if the nuisance is tall grass, or go onto the property and remove the waste and junk. The second resolution does the same thing, but for vehicles, so it's a separate process, but we now have the authority to go on and get rid of junk motor vehicles on private property.
As Mr. Mills mentioned, as practice now, I think what we are going to do is at the end of each resolution, talk about what was passed and what action was taken. Not everybody has a very short, this time, 168-page packet in front of them, so we just want to reiterate what happened so that people watching at home or sitting in the audience can be as clear as possible.
Well, actually, those at home, it is right there, and you can bring it up on your agendas. So they do have this.
Right.
Okay.
Tell them again.
Very good.
Tell them what you're going to tell them and tell them again.
There you go.
The teacher in me. Mr. Reckback.
Good evening, Board. The first item in the Public Services Department tonight is a resolution adopting sidewalk maintenance assessments and this is for portions of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale. We had a public hearing on this item earlier tonight to maybe address a couple of the comments that did come up. For the record, we do not charge interest on these. It is a flat dollar amount that we spread out over the 5 years, which you'll see by the 5-year proposed assessment rate that is included in the packet. All these individuals were notified via letter. Our inspector was on site throughout the project, answering questions and helping residents figure out what we were doing and why we were there. So happy to answer any questions that you all would have, but I would recommend adoption of the resolution.
So at this point, I'd be willing to recognize a motion.
I motion that we adopt the resolution adopting sidewalk maintenance assessments, portions of Arborwood, Grovewood, and Springdale.
I second.
Motion by Unger, second by Ulrich. Any discussion?
None.
I'll just add to what Mr. Weckbeck said, and you can get it fixed yourself if you know someone, or if you can do it, as long as you do it within the guidelines that are required. So,
And the permits are very inexpensive, and they're available at our Public Works Department. I think 5 years ago, mine was maybe $15. And that's just so we can send somebody out to make sure you're putting in the right thickness of concrete and expansion joints and that type of thing.
any other discussion? Mr. Peck?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
So with that approval, what we'll do is we'll send out letters again to everyone saying no.
No, this is, we'll send a document down to the auditor's office to fix these assessments to the property tax bills for the
Because
next
it's
5
already
years.
been completed,
Yep.
that's right. Yeah, so this wraps up that phase of the sidewalk maintenance assessment, and we're on to the next one.
All right, Mr. Weckbeck?
So the next item before you is a motion authorizing the township administrator to execute a grant agreement with SORTA for bus pull-offs. So in late 2021, the township was notified that we were actually successful in our grant application to receive dollars from SORTA, Metro, whichever name you want to call them, to install 4 bus pull-offs along Colerain Avenue. So that'd be 2 in the northbound direction, 2 in the southbound direction. These would be in the vicinity of the Northgate Mall and in the Groesbeck area south of Ronald Reagan. The total cost of the project, including right-of-way and engineering, is $585,000 or $585,068. Our portion that we are going to be responsible for amounts to about $199,986, and SORTA will be covering 90% of the construction cost only, which is $385,082. And I recommend adoption of the motion.
Any motions?
I motion that we authorize the township administrator to execute a grant agreement with SORTA for bus pull-offs.
Seconds.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes. Jeff, I had an extended conversation with you on the phone about this, and I agree that traffic on Colerain Avenue has been a huge problem, and if we can get vehicles that stop, such as buses, off to the side, that is certainly going to speed up the traffic flow on Colerain Avenue. I think that the ones in Groesbeck are actually south of Galbraith Road, which is, I've live over that way, so I come up that way quite often, and there are buses that stop, and there are people that try to get around them, and it is a traffic nightmare, and hopefully we can get that done. I think this is a part, also was identified in our KZF assessment of Colerain Avenue several years ago as one of the improvements that could be made. And I know at that time, we took a little bit of heat for spending money on that, but that was 2 or 3 years ago. We have a plan, and that plan made it easier for us to go out and get grants to implement that plan. And it takes time to get those grants. And while this is a state road, they haven't come running to fix a lot of these things. And I think you mentioned that the one to the south, we could even count those grant dollars as matching dollars that we're required to provide. And I'll let you expand on that a little bit. But so I will be in favor of this. There was one other small detail on there. This contract calls for a 4x6 sign to be erected, and it doesn't say what kind of sign. I envisioned it as being a sort of a your tax dollars at work sign, and that sign will need to go away because I don't think it meets our zoning requirements to put that sign up. And I don't think it meets our zoning requirements, but what we're doing here is, if we have a majority vote, is to allow you to execute a grant agreement. So I would ask you to get that straightened out exactly what that sign is, if it's permanent or temporary. I'm not interested in a permanent sign because there's not enough room in the right-of-way, and we would end up having to, purchase some right-of-way from somebody for that. And, but otherwise, I think this would be a great step towards getting traffic moving on Colerain Avenue a little better, because that is a problem. Just over in Green Township on Cheviot Road, one of these bus pull-offs was installed a couple years ago as a part of the Cheviot Road Rehabilitation Program with the Hamilton County Engineers Office, and it has greatly improved traffic flow on Cheviot Road, which is actually in Green Township, but I can see where this could do great things for Colerain Avenue. So with the, just make sure that sign language is cleared up in that. No other comments.
I agree. I think this is an outstanding opportunity to get traffic flowing on Colerain, and happy to accept a grant from SORTA.
I agree.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
So with that, we will sign the agreement after hopefully negotiating clearer terms about the signage, and then, we have to, terms of the contract are we've got to begin construction in 2023, or within a year of signing the agreement. So when we're off to the races.
And the final item I have before you this evening is a motion authorizing Township Administrator to execute a contract with Leda Construction for the 2022 road program. So the Township went out to bid. We received 4 responses back. All of those are listed in the agenda packet. The lowest bidder was Leda Construction at $1,893,692.29. This is above our engineer's estimate, but as we're seeing with inflation and different things coming in the market, this just came in higher than we expected. We have a couple options before us. We could go out to bid again for a lower number of streets, lower number of lane miles. We could decide this year that we are going to take a gap year on the cape sealing that we've been doing, and we could do some sort of combination of A and B. Our recommendation is to forego the cape sealing in 2022 and to move forward with the projects that we had identified, given that they were already in the previously approved 5-year road maintenance plan, so that if we made that commitment, we could stick to that commitment. So happy to entertain any questions that you all may have, but I recommend adoption of the motion.
I will go ahead and motion to authorize the Township Administrator to execute a contract with Leda Construction for the 2022 road program.
And I'll second.
Discussion, please.
Yes, the cape sealing process is a valuable maintenance tool, and it's a way to catch roads that still have a serviceable life left, and for a square yard price, much less than this total reconstruction price, we can preserve some roads that are in their midlife situation. So I would just ask to keep an eye on the budget, and if some money does become available for cape sealing, that we try to have at least some program for that. I know there's the subdivision off Brockton, and that was done a couple years ago. It looks a little rough at first, but those streets are now, we can push those back another 10 or 15 years before reconstruction, just because we've put a new hardened asphalt surface on top of the existing pavement, which is somewhat oxidized and cracked. So we've extended the life of those for a small cost. So I would just ask the administration to see if there's some other way we could continue our maintenance program, because you never want to not be doing maintenance on your existing street inventory.
And we typically build in contingency into these projects, and so to the extent that the project finishes in a reasonable time this year and that contingency is still there, we could certainly look to repurpose that amount. Contingency usually is somewhere between $100,000 to $200,000, which would then replace what we were anticipating on doing on cape sealing anyway.
And please report back to us in June or July whenever this gets started, because that season runs through about September or so. And while you can do the hot asphalt a little bit later, that cold laid asphalt microsurface works a little better when it's installed in hot weather, and you get a better service life out of it.
Yeah, I think we're facing significant headwinds with things like, and to see another bid that's $600,000 plus more on a bid of $2 million is, I mean, that's a big difference. and to see another one that's for $400,000 or $500,000 more. We've got to do the best we can, and I am the anti-deferred maintenance person. At some point, somebody has to pay for that deferred maintenance, so I agree with Mr. Unger in that if we can find that availability for that cape sealing, we can certainly push that forward as well. Ms. Orich.
I agree with what you guys said.
And thank you to all the different bidders that bid on that contract, if any of you are watching, because I know that takes time to put those bids together. You go out and drive and look at the streets, and you spend a lot of time, and you make a bid, and then you're not successful.
We certainly do appreciate the bids that we did receive. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Weckbach, and that'll allow us to resurface some roads in the township. The next items of new business are in the Development Department, and the first one is a motion that would set a public hearing on case ZA 2021-07. That is related to a text amendment for mobile food service uses. It's our hope that that public hearing will be set for February 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The recommendation is to adopt that motion.
I motion that we set a public hearing on case ZA 2021-07 text amendment for mobile food service uses on February 8th, 2022 at the meeting that begins at 7 p.m.
I second.
Motion by Unger, second by Ulrich. Discussion.
None.
None.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Great. Look forward to that public hearing. The next item is another motion requesting that the board set a public hearing on case ZA 2021-09. That's a zone map amendment for the property located at 3545 to 3547 Springdale Road. It's our hope that that public hearing will be set for February 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Recommendation is to approve.
I motion that we set a public hearing on case ZA 2021-09 zoning map amendment for 3545 to 3547 Springdale Road on February 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
I second.
Discussion.
None.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Very good, thank you, board. The next item is a similar motion requesting that you set a public hearing on case ZA 2022-01, which is related to a text amendment that would regulate charitable donation containers. That would be hopefully held on February 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Recommendations to approve.
I motion that we set a public hearing on case ZA 2022-01 on text amendment regulating charitable donation containers on February 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
I second.
Discussion, please.
None.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Happy to have this hearing set.
No other discussion.
No other discussion, I guess.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, board. The last item of new business and development is a motion to appoint an alternate member to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We recommend that you adopt a motion to appoint Ms. Claire Schaefer to the board as an alternate member for a 2-year term, which would expire December 31st, 2023.
I motion that we appoint a new member to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Her name is Claire Schaefer.
I second.
Discussion, please.
I don't know this person. I have never met them. I'm not related to them. I stay away from the zoning because we're sort of the appellate level for that. So,
Mr. Mills, if you wouldn't mind, I had a couple questions from citizens on this. If you could go through the process of how that's selected and applied and call for applications very briefly.
Sure. Yeah, so if you go to our website, you'll see that there is an application form for those who wish to serve on boards and commissions in Colerain Township. Any person that's interested in that type of service to the community would submit an application. And then each year, some years folks resign from their positions. Some years they are termed, their term ends, and And so every year, there are positions that are available on our zoning commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and I believe that's also how we handle applications for the Community Improvement Corporation. So once there's an application, it's reviewed by our zoning administrator, Mr. Allig. Mr. Allig staffs that, the Zoning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals. He's the staff person that leads those two committees. And then he has an interview with folks that meet, have qualifications, and then he makes a recommendation to me, and I make a recommendation to you.
So if I just moved into Colerain Township and I want to get involved, but there's not yet an opening on Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's something I want to do, that's up my alley.
Yep.
I could fill out an application now, and it would be kept on file.
Sure.
So if you're out there and interested in getting involved with zoning appeals, community improvement, and
Zoning Commission.
Zoning Commission.
Yep.
Any other discussion?
None.
None from me.
Okay, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. We have 5 items of new business in administration this evening. The first one is a resolution to establish the Dunlap Grove Lighting District. We had a public hearing on this matter earlier this evening, and our recommendation is to adopt the resolution to establish the district.
I'm going to make sure Mr. Baker's paying attention and motion that we establish Dunlap Grove Lighting District. Get my name in the minutes there.
Oh, okay.
I just entered it.
Thank you.
I second.
Motion by Waller, second by Ulrich. Any discussion?
Certainly there is, Mr. Wallert. Earlier in the meeting, during the public hearing, a resident stated that there were no streets on Dunlap Grove, and I had gone over there and looked at it because I try to go out and do my homework, and there's a lot of dirt moved, the curbs are in, and the streets are in. If there's a time to install street lighting, it would be now, while there's nothing in the way, while there's an ability to trench next to the road into the dirt and install and put that in as it's being built. We don't always get the chance to do that. A lot of these neighborhoods are well established. You don't know where the utilities are. You have to have them marked. They're not always there. There's all sorts of expenses involved with installing lights on existing 30 to 40, 50-year-old subdivisions. The best time to do it is now. Yes, there is a property owner, and since there's one property owner, I guess he can ask for it. As people buy and move in over there, they know coming in the door that there is a lighting assessment as a part of their purchase of their property. So I think it's a good thing to install them now.
I agree with you, and I don't think there's anybody that would say, oh, I don't want that. So I think it's,
I mean, they will be there.
Right, they're there, and
no surprises.
right, exactly.
No coming around 5 years from now asking to put them in. So, and I would invite anybody to, take a drive over there. Maybe you know somebody who's looking to buy or have something new built. I think it'll be a nice little addition for the
Absolutely.
township. So no other comments from me, Mr. Wallert.
All right, thank you. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Similarly, there's a resolution to establish a lighting district at Hunter's Ridge. This is the new phase of development at Hunter's Ridge, and similarly, we recommend adoption of the resolution.
I motion that we adopt the resolution to establish Hunter's Ridge 2021 Lighting District.
I second.
Discussion, please.
As Mr. Weckbach mentioned earlier, that process was started in 2021. That's why it's called 2021.
Any other discussions?
Nope.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a motion to purchase 4 bus benches. Last year in August, at the first meeting in August, the Board of Trustees directed staff to explore the possibility of adding benches at different points along Colerain Avenue. And particularly because over the past couple of years, the township has been fighting a legal battle with bench billboards, which provided the benches, but they did so illegally. Those benches were all removed in 2021. At the second meeting in August, the board considered the purchase of the benches, but ultimately voted against the purchase and Directed staff to wait until a meeting could be held with ODOT and more information could be gathered about whether or not SORTA would pay for the benches. So since August 24th of last year, there's been a proliferation of carts that folks have been sort of wheeling to bus stops so that they have something to sit on because there's no benches there. And it's certainly not in keeping with our efforts to keep Colerain Township clean, green, and prosperous. So it's our understanding I actually had a meeting on Friday with ODOT, I believe, and asked them if they would purchase bus benches for Colerain Avenue. They said that's not something that they do. So with SORTA not purchasing bus benches and ODOT not purchasing bus benches, if the township would like to purchase bus benches, it has to be us. So we have 6 bus stops that have 26 or more riders per day, and that is the sort of threshold for when a bus bench is needed, according to SORTA, and we've listed those here. With there being 6, we're asking you to purchase 4 because 2 benches are included in the project, the streetscape project down between John Rose and Shady Crest, which is slated for construction in 2023. So if we purchase 4, ultimately there will be 6. We'll cover all of the bus stops that have 26 or more riders per day, and these are also locations where there will be garbage cans. So we will have benches, garbage cans. The garbage cans will get picked up every week. So it's our estimate that these benches will cost $3,000 a piece, which includes installation and design. I know that I had a little bit of sticker shock when I saw that also, but these are benches that are designed to last. It's public furniture in a public street. They can't be able to be moved out into the road. They have to be able to put up with a beating and keep going for years and years and years. So our recommendation is to adopt the motion.
A motion to purchase 4 bus benches. Any seconds?
I will second it.
Discussion.
Yes, I've gone and looked at the sites, and in particular, there's a bus stop down on southbound Colerain by sort of between McDonald's and the car wash that is just south of there. Folks regularly take their shopping carts and push them down to the bus stop to carry whatever it is they've purchased, and then flip the cart on its side and use it as a thing to sit on, and then the bus comes and they get on and the cart's left there. I don't know if what this is going to do to get rid of the shopping cart leaving the parking lot problem. And I know that our litter guy occasionally goes out and finds stray shopping carts and repatriates them to where they came from. The store owners, whether it's Walmart or Target or whoever else, they don't know where their carts went unless they drive around and look for them. And so I guess it's a good step towards solving the problem of people flipping carts over to sit on, and go out and look and you will see it, and it's there, and it's not, it's unsightly, and hopefully with a combination of that and the trash cans and those are such high visibility, high traffic locations, hopefully it'll go away towards cleaning it up and making it something different than it is right now, so.
Can I ask also, sorry if you're not done, if there's a concrete pad with this installation of the bench?
That's a good question. I don't think that is included in the $3,000, but I don't think there is.
I know you've done your research on these benches. I had sticker shock also, so I just hope the bus riders do appreciate it.
I know.
Well, they must be bolted to something heavy so somebody doesn't pick them up. I would say before you purchase them, make sure that's included, and if it's not included, I wouldn't necessarily want them there.
Oh, yeah, they have to be bolted.
Somebody
down.
so they're gonna bolt them to something, and my recollection is there's dirt there.
Right.
So,
Not at all of the locations, but there is the one at Northgate Mall, certainly is dirt, yeah.
Is there an advantage to having a pad?
Yeah, because they need to be bolted down, like they need to be immovable objects.
Right. So will there be a pad at the Northgate one?
Yes, they will have to be.
Okay.
They will have to be like that.
And now, are the garbage cans going to be bolted down also?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so,
Because I know they've torn the tops off to make benches out of them also.
right?
You know, and I think this is part, if we're sending a message saying, hey, you know, we're giving you nice stuff, we want you to treat it well, I mean,
That never works.
well, I know, but it never works too, saying, hey, sit on a shopping cart, but don't litter. I mean, it's sending a little bit of a mixed message. And the problem I had is when I saw people, elderly people sitting there waiting for buses and that's just not, I don't think that's who we are, and that's not what we want. And if it gives people that are taking the bus, especially elderly folks or people that have special circumstances, a place to sit, I think it's important to provide that.
So we'll own these, and the maintenance responsibility will fall to us.
That's right. And we'll have to get an encroachment permit from Ohio Department of Transportation, and everything is on back order, so I can't promise that these are gonna go in the next 30 or 60 days, but we're gonna get them ordered and go through the regulatory process to get them.
Can we put ads on them?
No.
That's a joke.
So what we're doing is authorizing you to purchase them, and I would just say, and I'll vote in the affirmative on this, but I would say before you finalize the purchase, just, you know, report back to us how these are gonna be bolted down, because if they're not gonna be bolted down,
That's why I was asking about the $3,000, if that included the installation, the concrete pad, and the bolting down of these.
oh, I would think so, but it sounds like the administrator needs to look into that a little more.
I'll get you an answer.
Okay, so is it proper to go ahead and authorize you to purchase them, but tell you to
Yeah.
make sure that all that's gonna happen? You're not gonna buy something that you don't want.
That's exactly it.
All right, we'll call the question then.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Board. The next item is the first reading of a resolution adopting the policy book. It is my management style. I know it's important to Mr. Weckbach. We manage to policy, your policy. The Board of Trustees sets the policy for the township, and then we execute on that policy. There have been a number of new policies. We also recommend policy updates based on best practices, and we're doing so today. The idea here is that there's a lot to digest, and so you'll have the entire month to read it and think about it and let me know things that you like, things that you don't, things to change, things to leave the same. And then hopefully you'll be able to take action on this at the February meeting. There are 3 new policies that are included in the policy book. First one is internal media standards, which provides guidance to staff on how to handle media inquiries. There's the work assignment policy, which talks about best practices on how work is assigned to staff and clarifies, you know, the role of the administrator and the role of the trustees and the role of department directors, et cetera. And then there's park rules and regs, which memorializes a separate resolution. It brings that separate resolution, Resolution 1610, into the policy book. And this is intended to comply. We are working on becoming accredited in our public services department, roads and parks. This is one of the things that needs to be done for that accreditation. We've made a couple of recommendations for changes to existing policy, including paid time off. So we're talking about the removal of a reference to the what's called the dump system of vacation, which means that you get your annual amount of vacation all at once, and rather to accrue it on a per paycheck basis. We have an update to the telecommunications policy, which reflects changes to the roles and titles. So for example, last year we had a planning and zoning director. This year we have a development director, so just making sure that those things line up. There are others. There's changes to the travel and training policy, which is a recommendation from the state auditor that we complete a travel request form prior to travel for overnight stays. Social media policy, recommend changing some language based on recent court decisions. Facility security, we recommend changes to make this a general facility policy, and this is also came to us through our APWA accreditation review. And then finally, as we learned, we talked about earlier, change to the donation acceptance policy. which makes this into a general donation policy and sets parameters for township donations. So there's also some sort of discussion questions there that we're looking for feedback on. And so if you would take some time and review those suggested new policies and updates, and then let me know over the course of the next month, and I'll have those changes ready for you in February.
Okay, so this is a first reading, so if we have any kind of, I know there's a couple things I want to address, be sure to contact Mr. Mills. Any questions?
And I'll make one comment of something that I will address, and of course, the trustees don't have a chance to discuss this outside of meetings. The item 9, I guess it's 9-10 about bringing sick leave credit from other governmental agencies, going back a period of time. I'm not sure what the law is on that. I realize we are a political subdivision of the state of Ohio, but if somebody works at Norwood for a period of years, goes into private industry for 5 or 6 years, and then comes here, I'm not so sure I want to go back to 2015 and allow them to transfer their sick days that were likely earned at a different pay rate and bring them forward to Colerain Township. So if this shows up in the next final edition, I'll certainly be ready to discuss that at that next meeting. I guess that's the way to do it. But I would ask Matt and Kathy to look at that closely, so they're prepared to discuss that at the next meeting.
Discussed it a little bit with
I have no interest in going back and I don't know what the law is on it. I don't know if public employees can move their sick days around that they earned somewhere else and possibly took a payout for a percentage of them and left. Does this mean we go back in time and, somebody that, I just used Norwood as an example, if they were there and had 50 sick days and 52 sick days and they got paid out for 25% of them, which would be 13, and does that mean they have 39 sick days from 6 years ago that they're going to bring here? So I wouldn't be in favor of that. I guess that's the time to discuss that would be when we discuss this at our next meeting, but just so you know, I will. And I would ask the other 2 trustees to look at that closely and formulate your own opinions on it, and we'll be ready to talk about it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
So no action is required there.
Right.
And the next item is a motion to appoint trustee Matt Wallert to the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management Policy Committee. There's an organization called the Hamilton County Township Association, and they have solicited nominations for its representative to the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management Policy Committee. That's laid out in statute. There's one nomination from all the townships, and that was Colerain Township trustee Matt Wallert. So this section of the Ohio Revised Code requires that every township board of trustees in Hamilton County vote on this appointment, and so that's why we are here. The recommendation is to adopt.
I motion that we would appoint trustee Matt Wallert to the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management Policy Committee.
I second.
Any discussion?
Sure.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Kathy. You go first.
No, I would like any statutes or limitations to Matt's job as a trustee to Rumpke to be availed as per Ms. Davis's conflict of interest. I don't believe there is any, but if there is anything that you feel that there is a conflict of interest.
I think we've talked.
Are you going to vote on this? Or
I'm not going to vote on it,
Okay,
so I can't comment, so.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and comment on it. The Township Trustee Association is allowed to appoint somebody, and in contrast to the statements of Mrs. Davis, I think it's absolutely critical that Colerain Township have representation on that committee. After all, we're hosting the landfill. If there's issues with the landfill, I don't want to have to call some trustee out in Sims Township or Anderson Township and say, hey, could you please go talk to this group? I would rather have one of us to do it. And Matt's a opinionated, forceful, you can't comment, opinionated, forceful voice, and I think he'll do a great job with it. So I intend to support it.
I agree.
Call the question.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Abstain.
Very good. Mr. Wallert, did you have an item of old business you'd like to bring up?
Yes, thank you, by the way, for entrusting me with that, and I've already met with the folks at Solid Waste. So I'd like to make a motion to purchase 3 additional speed signs for the Northbrook community and begin to place those and, again, accumulate data and try to take care of some of the issues that we caused by putting the traffic calming in other places. I view this as kind of peeling back the parts of an onion and getting it one thing at a time. So I think 3 would be an appropriate number, I think, to place in the next wave. I think you've got locations that would benefit from that. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yep.
So that is my motion.
Do we need a motion to amend the agenda to put that on?
No, we do not, because it's a motion. If it was a resolution, we would.
And I'll second it then to bring it to the floor.
Discussion.
Are you talking about the very same speed signs that we purchased 3 or 4 years ago, those small 18 by 18 signs?
Yeah, those are the ones, right?
So, and the chief would know where we got those from, and the funding for that would come from?
We would add that to permanent appropriations.
So do we need to do that before?
No, I think that there are lines available to write purchase orders off of, and we would increase those lines in permanent appropriations.
It seems, my recollection is those were about $1,500 when we bought them, or how much were they? They're about $5,000. A piece? Yes. I thought it was $1,500 a piece, and we got 4 of them for $6,000, or?
You have options. You could have some that report back data that are powered solar, or you can get some that are battery. There's a lot of configuration that you're running.
I know I've asked you to put those out in response to citizens' requests, and you've put them on Blue Rock Road, on Struble Road, on Gaines Road, basically on county roads, and I don't know that we've had them in a, I guess we had them on Niagara previously.
We regularly have them in Township.
Right. Yeah, the 3 times over the last 4+ years that I've asked about them, it was always somebody complaining about speeds on a county road, and they do give great reports. We had a complaint over on Blue Rock between Cheviot Road and the Green Township line by Seiler, and heck, we had a fellow going 71 miles an hour over there, and it doesn't write him a ticket, but it picks us up. It tells us when those speed violations are occurring, and it allows us to, rather than place an officer there for a full day to watch for speeders, we kind of know that the fast ones are coming through at a certain time of the day, and that, we could go put somebody over there for half an hour and likely catch them. And as a rule, we don't go out and write a whole lot of speed unless it's a dangerous situation. We don't really rely on that as a source of revenue like other municipalities do.
We don't get anything. Yeah, I think the best place to look to fund this would be the DEA funds, if to the extent that they're available. Would those be
appropriate?
Yeah. So the trouble with the DEA funds is we've got a huge outstanding debt that is owed to us, and we just get the money when they decide to give it to us. So we can never tell exactly when we're going to get how much each year. But if there are funds available, that would be a great source because it's not local money. It's
and it's my understanding we have a significant amount of DEA funds that have.
They're outstanding, but
Yeah.
not unpaid. Yeah.
So would we, while we're still having this discussion, if we go ahead and front the money out of the general fund, is there a way we can replace that with DEA money, or should we wait till we get the DEA money to buy these, or?
Chief loved it when you said the general fund.
No, I don't. I mean, that's.
I'd probably say the police fund, but
I mean, I don't know. Where would we get if we were going to buy these tomorrow? Where would we get the money for it?
So you've appropriated money. The township, the board of trustees has appropriated money in the police fund and in the DEA fund. And so what we have to figure out is we'll have to go back and look and see, I can't answer that as I sit here today. I'd have to figure that out. I know that we have the money. It's just I've got to figure out where is the best place to pull it from, and I can't answer that.
And that's fine. And I think they're a good device. And I didn't know this was coming until just now, so I would prefer that stuff like this was on the agenda in the future, so that I, could ask these questions like I typically do when I call you on Wednesday or Thursday when the
We actually
draft
talked about it
agenda
last
come out.
meeting.
Right, but I still don't see it on here, so, but that's fine. I just, in the future, I would prefer that, if we're gonna buy something, then that would give Jeff the chance to go, yes, we can get it out of this fund and that type of thing, so.
Can I, oh, sorry.
The chief is retiring in September, and typically there's a payout that's associated. Maybe we could reduce that payout in order to.
While you're on the hot seat over there, what is the longevity of these signs and what is the annual maintenance that's required if we buy 3 at that significant amount of money?
The only issues we've had is replacement of batteries.
Okay,
They seem to have held pretty well so far. We had any issues at all. They tend to be fairly well, or easy to maintain, and we just, occasionally the batteries just stop charging.
okay.
And we do have to replace that.
And you really recommend these as the best deterrent for these streets?
Certainly after the study we did on Niagara.
Okay.
Really showed that they had a huge impact. And we are our best bang for the buck.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
I'll just say, they do work, and the times that I've been contacted by citizens, they are effective, and, I don't know if you've seen one of the reports, Kathy, or not.
No, I have
Chief-
never been privy to that.
Chief, if you could send her the report you sent me for Blue Rock Road, it's very, I'm amazed at the amount of data these things pick up. And it lets us know where the problems are, and it helps us to, prioritize it. Our men and women, our police department are very busy, and it helps us to prioritize where we should put our manpower at. So.
And I think it's important to note that we as a board committed to solving some of these speed problems several months ago and getting data in the data shows, and the experts are telling us, Chief's telling us, and Mr. Mills are telling us that the speed signs are the things that work. And I want to, like I said, I want to create, broaden that impact so that we can solve this problem. It's been an ongoing issue that seems to often get punted away. Yeah, I realize it's expensive, but it's the kind of damage that can be done in 1 second. Somebody lose their life, or the kind of property and damage that can be done with somebody speeding through there can certainly pay its way. But that's my view. 1 of 3. Any other comments, questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the other item on old business is a resolution adopting a special assessment policy. So this was drafted and presented at the December 14th meeting for a first reading. In October of last year, there was a discussion about potential funding sources to further existing road program dollars. I think we talked a lot about this idea that we have lots of roads and we are underfunding the replacement of those roads. And if we want to get into a resurfacing cycle of 30 years, we are going to have to significantly increase our spending on road resurfacing, or come up with innovative ways to extend or make these dollars go farther. I think that we've, over time, everyone has seen, residents will come in and bring, I've seen residents bring scoops of rubble and drop them on the dais and say, this is my road, fix it. And then when we look, they could be 100, number 100 on the list. What this special assessment policy does is it allows any group of residents to get their street to the top of the list by saying, I'm going to put some skin in the game, for lack of a better term. I'm going to commit to paying for a percentage of this road resurfacing. That'll be spread out over 10 years, and that would allow them to get their road to the top of the list. And it'll also allow the township to get their road dollars farther, because now they're only spending half of what they would otherwise. So that is what the special assessment policy is. It's been adopted by a number of communities, including, I just saw recently, Fort Thomas uses this program in Kentucky. Springfield Township, our neighbor here in Hamilton County. I think that we will see it increasingly in use as dollars get tighter and need gets higher. So recommendation is to adopt the resolution.
Any motions?
I motion that we adopt the resolution, I motion for the resolution adopting road pavement assessment district policy.
I second.
Discussion.
You said this is very successful in Springfield Township, and you said a high percentage of their roads are done this way, correct?
Well,
Or-
they do it a little bit differently. I mean, it's a percentage for sure. They're able to do more. And what they do is, if I'm not mistaken, they set their assessment at a certain millage. Rather than a percentage of the project cost, they set it at a millage. So they're basically like voting on a certain millage of taxes for themselves, for that area. So it's a little bit different, but, I am impressed with Springfield Township's road program, frankly. I mean, they do a lot of roads, and so.
I guess as this, we could learn a little more as we go along. This is just for projects that are between the curbs and not for anything else that might improve the street, such as something else that the neighbors got together to do, such as anything from put trees right next to the street in the right-of-way, not in private yards, but, you know, or do repairs on the street. I can think of a street up in Lake Hills where there's about a 60-foot section of it that's in really bad shape, and the rest of the street is not. So does this require them to do the whole street, or could they do it for an amount? Look, we need 20 grand to fix this section of the street. So they could do it for a partial street, or do you think it would work that way? And I guess, you know, we'll wait and see. Ultimately, if those neighbors up there, as an example, got together and wanted to do this, would it ultimately come back to the board and approve their plan, or would they just, by doing this, are we giving you the authorization to just go ahead and do it?
No, that's the beauty of this, is, so it provides an outlet for residents who want to get their road to the top of the list. There's a public hearing that would have to occur, and then ultimately, it's the Board of Trustees that would decide whether or not to create the special assessment district. So there's no mandate that you have to, or the township has to do anything. You reserve the right throughout the entire process to stop it if you don't think that it's appropriate, or if there's a compelling reason not to. So this just creates a process to allow residents to sort of, to petition you all to bump their road to the top of the list if they're willing to commit financially to helping that along. Ultimately, for every single project, you guys would have the
And we could turn it down just like a lighting district if we ever turn that down, even though they did all that footwork. Ultimately, if we turn down one of these lighting districts, then it wouldn't happen. Okay.
You got it.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yep.
Mr. Mills, let's chat.
Yeah.
I've got a couple kind of big picture questions that you give me your best view on. Sure. So I'm a citizen. I come to you and I say, look, the job of government is police, fire, and roads.
Yep.
Why am I having to pay more?
You do not.
Okay.
You don't have to pay more.
I mean, I think that there's a point in saying, I'm slightly uncomfortable asking people to do. Second part, I go door to door and I knock on Mr. Baker's door, and he's usually grumpy when he answers anyway. And this creates I think it has a tendency, it could turn citizen against citizen. Is that something that you've seen? We've not seen it in the lighting district, but $14 a month is a little bit different than a road.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, there are, somebody said there's 6 million ways to die. There's 6 million ways to dislike your neighbor also.
Right.
I found out from working here that there are lots of different reasons that neighbors don't get along, and this could be one of those, yep.
So kind of talk me through what this does, not financially, not road-wise, but for community. I mean, because I feel I don't have a better word than awkward or uncomfortable with this as a proposal, because I've grown up thinking, well, you know, the government fixes your roads, they give you police, they give you fire. That's what they do. And here we're saying, well.
And we still will.
We still will, but if you really want to be bumped up, I guess.
I think one of the troubles is that, so the benefit to the entire township is that we get through the list faster if residents take responsibility for the road in front of their house. So one of the things that has always sunk any calls for a road levy is that, hey, we all get taxed, but the roads that get fixed aren't in front of my house. And so that's unfair. What this does is it gives, it puts more, it's more of like a user fee, frankly, whereas it's the folks that are gonna benefit from the improvement are paying for it, and the rest of the township is not gonna pay for that improvement specifically. So it also gives folks an opportunity, because like I said, we don't have dedicated funding sources to fix as many roads as is needed to be on a 30-year replacement schedule. So there are going to be, and this is gonna get worse, not better, there are going to be bad road conditions that are going to be far down on the list, and it's gonna be hard to say, like, I'm sorry, but there are worse roads than yours. You have to wait for another 6 years. And that's gonna be very difficult conversations. This gives an opportunity, an escape valve.
And that's not a unique problem to Colerain Township, that's a governing problem, because we keep adding more roads and we can't keep up with fixing the ones we have. Sooner or later, there's a tipping point where somebody says we can't pay for it.
That's right. It's called a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, okay, yeah, this is outside the box to me, and it's outside the box what I normally see of government, but I understand, I want to have this dialogue because I understand the need for it, so I'm not completely dismissing it. It just kind of makes me feel a little queasy. But I get it. I get the need for it. I do. I certainly do. Any other comments? Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Board. Finally, we have a number of consent items.
Can we do those one at a time, because I think there's controversy on several of them.
On several of them. Okay, so
Three to do A, and then do B and C, and then do the last three.
Okay. Okay, first item is a donation acceptance in the Public Services Department. It's a park bench.
And just to get it to the floor, I'll motion that we accept donation of the park bench for public services.
And I'll second that to have discussion.
Yes. We have a program of putting benches in the parks. And there is a standard for those benches, and does this bench meet that standard?
No, there's a yeah, so you're referring to the Memorial Park Bench Program, and I think I've spoken to each of you individually about this. If accepted, this bench could go, not in a public park, but, for example, it could go in the courtyard of the community center, or the courtyard of the senior center, between the community center and the senior center.
Could it go, for instance, at the pickleball court, or somewhere that's not, so that program is just limited to the parks. Is the donor okay with not putting it in the park?
I don't know that. I haven't had the chance to reach out to that person. But this, the reason we got back to that whole, like, a $3,000 bench on the road. Why do we have that standard? We have a similar standard in our parks because our parks are very nice, and so we wouldn't want to, throw any old bench in there. That's not.
Well, I think it's a very nice offer of a donation. I just want to make sure it's compatible with
Our policy.
with our policy of what goes in the parks.
Yep. I would not envision this bench going into a park. I would envision it going onto a township facility that would be very necessary, and we would be very grateful to have it, and I'm sure that it would help many people, but it probably would not be in our parks because, as you point out, we have this Memorial Park Bench Program.
And so contingent on it not going into a park, I'd be in favor of it. So
Okay.
that's my comment.
That brings up a whole other issue, then if we don't put it in a park, we put it by pickleball. Is there a uniformity for benches at the pickleball court? I mean,
So the purpose of the Memorial Park Bench Program is, many people, when a loved one passes away, are looking for a way to sort of a permanent or semi-permanent sort of fixture to remind them of that person that they loved. And that's why we have that Memorial Park Bench Program, and we have standards for it. If this was accepted, it would not be a part of that, so we wouldn't put it in the parks. I don't know.
but what if I want to put something right next to it that's completely not like it? I mean, do we run the risk of just it being kind of?
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't master planned our, sort of street furniture or public furniture in our parks. We just have that Memorial Bench Program. I think it's up to you guys. If you would like to accept the bench, we will find a place for it that is in keeping with our Memorial Park Bench Program. If you do not want to accept the bench, that's fine. We will move on.
And I know there's been a couple other offers of benches that don't fit the memorial program. Would those be welcome as well then at this point?
I would think on, the trustees would vote on them individually.
Okay.
I've had this discussion, so we're.
Yep. Great.
Mr. Baker? Yeah, I motioned,
seconded it to get it to the floor.
I
didn't
motioned and Unger seconded, I think. Sorry.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes,
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
and then do B and C together.
Okay, the next two items on the consent agenda are a donation acceptance in the Department of Fire and EMS for $100. Grateful for $100 donation from Hair Max Beauty Supply Northgate to the fire department, and also from Hair Max Beauty Supply Northgate to the police department.
I would motion we accept the consent items B and C, the donation to fire and EMS of $100, and the police department $100, and thank you to Hair Max.
I second that, and we do appreciate their generosity.
Discussion, please.
None?
None.
I'll just add my thanks for their generosity. Mr. Baker, we will call the roll.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Great. The next three items on the agenda, on the consent agenda, are a police clerk, the hiring of a police clerk in the police department. It was posted. We received applications, conducted interviews per our standard hiring policy, and a conditional offer of employment was extended to Kia Roberson. Wage for this job is $15 per hour for 40 hours a week. Contingent upon your approval, she'd be eligible to begin work on January 12th. One thing that I'll note here, Board, is that with each new hire, there in the trustee agenda, there's a new hire authorization form. And on that new hire authorization form, it lists individuals as full-time, part-time, FLSA exempt or non-exempt. So to a question that came up earlier in the citizens address, this is a non-exempt position, FLSA non-exempt. So
I see that on here. It's checked FLSA non-exempt. And it also checks non-collective bargaining and permanent and full-time are the four that are,
yes.
that are checked on Andrew Morris.
Yep. So that's our next one, which is Andrew Morris. He is will become a police officer with your approval this evening. The wage for this job is $25 per hour at $25.48 per hour for 40 hours per week. Contingent upon your approval, he'd be eligible to begin work on January 12th. And as you pointed out, Mr. Unger, he'd be FLSA non-exempt, and in fact, there's an error here that is a CBA position.
I see that.
CBA stands for collective bargaining
I
agreement.
know that.
Yep. Finally, there's a promotion in the full-time firefighters in the Department of Fire and EMS. This position was posted, and we received applications, conducted interviews, and made conditional offers of employment to the following four individuals: Patrick Dixon, Colin Lawson, Jacob Lucan, and Eric Martin. The starting wage for this job is $18.20 per hour for 53 hours per week, and they'd be eligible to begin work on January 23rd, 2022. Recommend approving all consent items.
Are there any motions regarding consent items, letters D, E, and F is provided in your board packet?
I would motion that we approve items D, E, and F,
I'll second.
Discussion?
just with the correction to that the CBA
Yep.
position box is checked.
Great.
No other discussion.
All right, none for me. We will move to vote.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. We've accomplished a lot tonight.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to the fiscal officer report. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Board. Just a few items. First, the financial report for November has been posted online, and the Finance Department's working very diligently to get December finished as well. Secondly, to Ms. Moore's point, I have no objection either of putting proclamations in the minutes, so I can start adding those, no problem. And then thirdly, I would like to just add a little bit to the issue that you brought up earlier with the power outage, because it did affect me and my family and my neighborhood. And I'll be brief. I just wanted to give a little bit more of a broad update as far as the timeline goes, that hopefully will show the level of frustration that the residents of my neighborhood, Stone Ridge Estates, had with Duke.
Not with the township, with Duke.
Not with the township, because first of all, I want to just commend and thank Trustee Younger, Trustee Wallert, Jeff Mills, Jeff Weckbach, Chief Denny, Chief Walls, and all those who helped to open up the community center as a warming station. It was amazing. I sent a couple texts, and from there, things just started happening. It's a shame that it took that, as opposed to Duke just, in my opinion, doing their job. But at 1:58 a.m., our power went out in the middle of winter. Duke was immediately notified of the outage, and we immediately were given updates as to when an estimate was to come online. First estimate was 6:15 a.m. Second estimate was 9 a.m. Third estimate was noon. The following estimate was 6 p.m., then 9 p.m., then midnight. Long story short, we were without power for 24 hours. And I think the issue that my neighbors have was that the subcontractor that actually came out and did the work wasn't notified for 11 hours. They did everything they could do, and they did a great job. But for some reason or another, there was no dispatch of any units to come out and start work for 11 hours in the middle of winter. So let alone with just the heat being an issue, thankfully it was, it wasn't extremely cold, but for 24 hours, believe me, the house gets pretty frigid even when it's in the 30s. But other than that, the amount of food, and I can't wait for the garbage to get put out. Our garbage night's Thursday night, because my neighbors, 170 of us, pretty much had to empty our refrigerators. The response that we got when calling Duke was amazing at how poor it was. And they basically said, listen, if you have a complaint, call the Utilities Commission. So what I would like to do is to ask the board, I know that you have a telephone call or a conference with them on Thursday, but if you're not satisfied with what you hear, I would like for the Board of Trustees and Colerain Township to issue a complaint to the Utilities Commission. A lot of my neighbors did, because that was what was told to us. Well, if you have a problem, take it up with the Utilities Commission. So I would just ask the board I appreciate you talking to them on Thursday, but I would also ask that the board file an official complaint with the Utilities Commission. So with that,
I don't have
all I
a
have.
call with them, do you?
No, hey, Mr. Weckbeck, Mr. Mills, and myself, we can't have more than one.
Right,
I
okay, so
actually said-
you've done something.
Yeah, I've set up the call with government.
That's fine. Yeah,
Government affairs.
I'm
yeah.
not familiar with that. Thank you.
So I will be on there, and I think Mr. Mills will reiterate that I can be a little bit of a pain when it comes to somebody that I feel hasn't done their job. I mean, I will hold them accountable. To the point where they might hang up on me. So.
Okay.
I was hung up on, and a lot of my neighbors were too, so.
Really? That's interesting. Okay. I've had my issues calling customer service. It's difficult nowadays. I don't understand. I mean, I don't know. It seems like people have used COVID for a response and say, well, it's because COVID. Yeah. But we will get some answers for you. Executive session.
Yes, sir. I recommend that the board go into executive session in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss employment and discipline of public employees.
I motion that we go into executive session for the reason detailed by Jeff Mills. Was there,
And just to add a little bit more information, the Fraternal Order of Police Representative Barry Gray and a police officer, Mr. Officer Fernbach, will be joining us in executive session.
do you expect any, I'll go ahead and motion to go into executive
second it.
session.
Okay, now discussion.
So do you expect us to take action when we come back or not?
No.
So there'll be no action, we'll come back and we'll adjourn the meeting when we're done with executive session, but no action.
That's what I anticipate.
And I also add for the record, this will probably include a brief personal recess to take care of any personal needs that may have arisen in the last 3 hours, so. Any other discussion?
No.
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes, so we will be back. We're going into executive session. Slight recess first.
What time is it right now, Matt?
I have
9:39.
9:39. We are returned from executive session at 11:44 PM. Mr. Baker, the roll, please.
Ms. Ulrich,
Here.
Mr. Unger,
Here?
Mr. Waller.
Here. We are back from executive session. Mr. Mills, anything to report?
No, sir.
All right. At this point, I'd be very willing to entertain a motion of some sort.
I would motion we adjourn this meeting at 11:44 PM on Tuesday, January 11th.
And I will second that.
Any discussion?
No.
Not from me.
Not for me. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes, so we are adjourned at 11:44
44 PM.
PM. Thank you.